Good morning, everybody. Thanks for logging on. We've got 17 people in the room and over 60 registered. So we'll just give people a couple more minutes and then we will get started. Yeah, and because this is a webinar, only panelists' video screens will be available. So anyone that's just registered as an attendee, your video won't be on. You'll just be able to listen in. And then there'll be some opportunities to use the chat and the Q&A boxes as that comes up during the conference. Okay, we're at 9 o'clock. We've got 25 guests logged in, so we'll just give another minute or so. If people are tuning in from work or something like that, the roads may have been bad as they were for me. So we'll just give a little bit of leeway. And yes, we have a question about whether this will be recorded, and it will be. Yeah, we're already recording, so no worries there. What is the background poster behind me?
It's a wallpaper.
Yeah, it's just a wallpaper installment here at the food center in Saskatoon. It's got lots of colorful food products on it, so it's a nice background, especially for this type of a conference. It's better than the white wall, plain white wall in our office. So yeah. Okay, I think we're going to get started. People can obviously tune in as they are available this morning. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining Awesome today for our third annual conference. Our theme for the conference is So You Want to Start a Food Business. And obviously this is aimed towards new food businesses in the concept or startup phase. My name is Bailey. I'm the Awesome program business advisor. I started here at Awesome about 2 months ago. My background is a degree in food science, and then I also have a master's in professional accounting and a CPA designation. And I've also run my own business called The Local Kitchen for the past 5 years, and it is a shared commercial kitchen facility with culinary event space. And so I have a bit of practical background, so I'm able to relate to some of the entrepreneurs in the group as well. I'm thrilled to be spending the morning with you as your MC. I'm joined this morning by my colleague Shanuka, who is also in the room, and she is the Awesome program manager. She's been here for a little over a year, I think. And so if you've attended things before, you're probably familiar with her. She'll be popping in with commentary and announcements throughout the morning as well. Okay, So as this is a conference for startups, the Awesome program may be new to some of you. So I'll just give you a little rundown of what we do here. The Awesome program is dedicated to the success of women in food processing. We're a program out of the Saskatchewan Food Industry Development Center, a processing facility with a wide variety of food development and innovation services here in Saskatoon. It's supported by the Government of Canada and our program through the Women's Entrepreneurship Strategy Fund. And although we are located in Saskatoon, we support women-owned businesses in Alberta, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan. Awesome is actually an acronym. It stands for Advancing Women Entrepreneurs Through Skills Development, Opportunity Identification, Manufacturing Advice, and Export Guidance. Our membership is free and all of our events and services are free to our members. The only requirement is that you must be a women-owned business based in Alberta, Saskatchewan, or Manitoba. So we offer events like these, one-on-one business advising, group training programs, and connections to different opportunities. So if this sounds valuable, please join our community by signing up for a free membership. And we'll drop the link in the chat. And once you sign up, either Shanuka or myself will reach out to see if there's anything specific that we can support you with. Okay. I'm going to start the morning with, before we launch into everything, I will be acknowledging that we are connecting today from traditional treaty territories, particularly treaties 1, 2, 6, where I am, and 7. We pay our respects and reaffirm our relationships to the history, Indigenous ancestors, and peoples of this land. This acknowledgement is one small part of truth and reconciliation, and there's a dark history of food and health sector as it relates to Indigenous people, but there's also a potential path forward that ensures our food systems are sustainable and reconciled. This movement is supported by government, non-government, and Indigenous agencies. For example, initiatives like diversity in procurement is one path forward for our industry. I'd like to encourage you to keep your learning path open as participants in the development of these new food systems. As a Canadian food processor, you can contribute towards truth and reconciliation, and I hope that you feel empowered to do so. We have a few housekeeping items for today. We have a jam-packed agenda. For the sake of time, we will be posting the speaker bios in the chat for you to check out and opting for quick intros throughout the morning instead of a full bio. I want to highlight that we have a great feature for our members, which is a Slack channel. If you're not familiar with Slack, it's an instant messaging app, and we use it to provide a direct connection with other women-owned businesses to discuss challenges and share resources. So we'll often pop in some grant opportunities in there, and if somebody has a question, say, on a shipping challenge they're having, others can kind of chime in and help them out with suggestions there. So once you become a member, we will invite you to the Slack channel. If you are already a member and you aren't on our Slack channel and want to be, just direct message Shanuka and she will get you added and send you an invite. Oh,
I'll be on the call later today.
Okay, she will be on the call later today. She's not logged in as she's in the same room as me, so. And then just to let you know, there's a lot of information that we're going to be covering today. So we've decided that we're going to put together a physical resource guide. And this is going to include lots of good startup tips and things that are covered in this conference. And we'll be sending it out in about a week to all of the participants today. We're all probably like new here, definitely don't know everybody in the chat. So if you'd like to take advantage of the networking opportunity, drop your name, your business, and the city that you're located in the chat, and then we can have a good idea of who's on the call with us. We will also be using the Q&A function on Zoom for our question panels this morning. So make sure if you have a question for any of the speakers to put it in that Q&A box, and we will get to it once the session is near the end. And we have a door prize, 2 door prizes actually. So we've got 2 boxes full of delicious food products, and most of which are created by awesome members. So at the very end, we will be drawing for those door prizes. So stick around right till the end. So here is our full agenda. We are truly honored to be presenting this agenda today, especially with tomorrow being International Women Entrepreneurship Day. It seems very fitting. So first thing up this morning after this welcome will be our manufacturing mini sessions with Ricky, Aaron, Brev, and Sarah, all from the Saskatchewan Food Center. So that'll be packed full of industry tips on food processing. Then we'll take a short break and Shnuka will come in and announce the achievement awards for this year and a few other announcements that are happening with Awesome. We'll move on to the recipe to retail fireside chat with Dahlia, Shonda, and Shannon, which is more of an informal discussion. They'll be sharing perspectives on taking an idea for a food product and taking it all the way to where it's ready for sale at retail. And then Carly Manish-Winnick will be our awesome keynote speaker. Carly has been active in the Awesome program and actually won one of our achievement awards last year. So we are excited for her to share her chef's roadmap to starting food product business. Okay, so again, we've allotted time for Q&A after each session. Make sure you use that Q&A box and we'll do our best to get your questions answered. So thank you again for joining us. Special thank you to all of our speakers that are lending their time today. And let's begin. Okay, I'm just gonna do a little Zoom reorganization here just to make sure we've got all the right faces on the screen. So Food Center folks, if you want to turn your cameras on. Okay, and I will stop my share. Okay, hi everybody. Thank you so much for coming this morning. First up, we are going to have Ricky, then Aaron, Brev, and Sarah, and we'll save all of our questions till the end. All of our panelists this morning are experts in their field and have a wide breadth of knowledge in their area, and there's a lot to cover, and we're going to try and do this in a short amount of time, so it'll be kind of like food processing speed dating for this first session. So everyone, I'm going to turn my camera off while you're speaking, and then when I turn my camera back on, you will know that you have 2 minutes to wrap up. So thank you so much for the presentations that you've prepared for today. And let's get going. First up is Ricky Lamb, Manager and Scientist for Ingredient Innovation, who will chat with us on ingredient sourcing. Over to you, Ricky.
Okay. Thank you so much for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be able to speak to you guys today. And yeah, if you're not connected with the Awesome program, you definitely should. I'm excited for you to be able to do so because they're a great group of people. They love to see entrepreneurship and passionate about it and see people succeed and trying to help them find solutions to problems that they may run into. And so just a little bit of background about who I am and what I am, kind of where I come from. Prior to this, I actually worked for an ingredient company as a technical services manager. And in my time there, I actually supported a lot of small entrepreneurs trying to get into the business, looking for ways to kind of buy ingredients and find ways to produce the products that they do today. And so I'm thankful that like in my time there, it's been fun to watch people kind of come in with an idea, not exactly sure what they're trying to do. And then they're like asking questions like, who can we get connected with? How do we get connected? What can we do? And then how do we succeed? and then be able to work with them to see them launch a product. And then from then, be able to see them kind of see some of these products go on to retail store shelves. And I'm thankful that actually one of my clients back in the day, I'm seeing her products across Canada. And as I walk through different stores and see the national chains, whether that's Sobeys or a Safeway or what have you, I'm thankful that I see their products on store shelves. And every time I see that, I'm reminded that it all begins with an idea, and then that people like you are pursuing, and then to see launch. And so if you're kind of wondering, like, how do we find ingredients? Like, what is a way to kind of, get into that? I mean, and I'm here to try and share a little bit of insights on that. And then I want to start off by just kind of naming the reality. And then that reality is we are in a pandemic, and we're hearing about shortages. We're seeing pictures out of BC of empty grocery stores. We're hearing about, things having a hard time being stuck at ports. This is a challenging time. And, I know that you're going to be struggling with some of this stuff, and that's not to say to not engage, but it's actually another way of saying, hey, it's time to double down. Let's try and get creative. Like, how can we find solutions to our problems, and what can we do a little bit differently to be able to kind of meet some of those demands? And so my first tip kind of to you is to just make a call, to call some of these ingredient companies up to try and establish a relationship, because by talking to them, you can get the ball rolling. Sometimes as these ingredient companies are working with a wide range of different clients, they might already have a solution for you. Let's say that you're trying to get into the pasta business, and they might go, if you're doing small scale pasta manufacturing, maybe you can call up these companies, whether that's in the States or in Canada. If you're trying to make chips, or if you're making puffs, here are a few companies that we can introduce you to. And so part of that linking process is really important in the ingredient business, because ultimately there's a relationship that needs to be formed, and that relationship is with you. And so when you kind of calling up different ingredient companies, it's introduce yourself and kind of tell them a little bit about what you're trying to do. Because it's if you have a great idea, I know that you want to try and keep things a secret so someone else can't steal it. But at the same time, if you reveal a little bit about what you're trying to do, they might be able to better help you. And so establish a relationship, give them a call, figure out who your salesperson is, and just kind of be honest and be like, hey, I'm starting out. I might only buy like a bag or two ingredients every couple of months, or maybe 100 kilos in a year. So I know it's not small volumes, but as you kind of grow, then you might be able to get better pricing. You're going to be able to kind of help. They can help you out in different ways. In addition to calling to individual ingredient companies, is you could work with distributors. Now, these companies represent a range of different ingredient companies. For instance, let's say if you go to Dawn Foods, they do a lot of ingredients for the bakery business, and so you might buy some flour from them, but you can also buy salt and sugar and some other things. And so if you kind of buy from a distributor, it kind of helps because they have a range of ingredients that can help you with. And so when you're running into problems, you call them back up, they can go, oh, so if this doesn't work for you, maybe you try this or try that. And then as you kind of work with them, one of the benefits of working with a distributor is that they typically ship out of maybe a few warehouses. And that might be beneficial to you because that allows you to have lower shipping costs. And so one potential strategy, that you could potentially use to kind of mitigate some of the troubles in the pandemic is, who can you partner up with? Are there people that you can get connected with through the Awesome program that are sourcing similar ingredients as you? Now, and then so instead of buying only for yourself at a larger quantity, it might be easier to kind of manage some of the shipping costs and the delays. If you think that this problem of shipping problems and logistics being troublesome these days, it's not just unique to you. It's something that I struggle with too. And in this pandemic, I've had people discontinue products on me. I've had to switch suppliers. I have to find innovative ways to kind of source across the border. Now, speaking about working across the border, depending on how often you do it, it might be beneficial to you to kind of have a broker company to help you get some of these ingredients over the border. And this typically probably kicks in when you kind of start entering into the pallet quantities and you're ordering more regularly, and that'd be worthwhile for you to have a relationship with. And so if you're able to source from a distributor, that allows you to potentially save on shipping costs. And then if you're working on new things, be sure to ask for samples. Test out the ingredients before you commit to an order. Ask them for samples, and don't be afraid to ask for more than you think you need, because you want a little bit of wiggle room to kind of figure out your process, figure out if it works, make some fine tuning if you need to ensure that you've got an excellent product. So when you're kind of thinking about ingredients and working with ingredient companies, I would encourage you to, yes, first launch your product and get that on the market and get customer feedback, figure out if your product is working or not, but also be thinking about the next thing. And so what could your next thing be? Do you want to increase the protein content by 50%? Do you want to switch to become gluten-free? Do you want to kind of work on like organic certified products? You know, start planning out for your next thing before you even get there. And so once you've launched your product, you're starting to get feedback, then look towards the next things. And so when you're looking at the next thing, you know, ask for these ingredients and start figuring out, hey, if I wanted to make a higher protein product, you know, who can I talk to? What are the ingredients that I can try? In addition to that, ask them for technical specifications, ask for certificates of analysis for your ingredient companies, because that's going to help you out long term. When you're looking at several ingredients and you look at their technical specifications, you might see that one product is coming in at 20% protein content max, whereas another one might be 55% protein or 80% protein or more. And so if you're trying to hit a certain protein target, then you might go, okay, well, I only need more or less of this ingredient, of this next ingredient, if I were to switch over. And so that allows you to kind of be able to target nutritional content. If you're asking for different suppliers, ask them if they are organic certified. If it is an organic ingredient, you know, who are they certified under? Can they show you some documentation regarding that? And then start planning out what the cost structure might be, kind of how you can source it, whether that's readily available or not. And so there's a lot that you can do there, but document everything. And then, like, lastly, you know, ingredient salespeople are just, they're relational people too. And what they're hoping to do is kind of get feedback from you. By getting good feedback from you, what they're trying to do is they're figuring out, what can they do? Can they help you with a different ingredient? Is there something else that they can show to kind of, to like help you get ahead? Or if you're telling them, hey, this product doesn't quite work in this application, maybe they have something else to suggest. By giving them good feedback, they might be able to recommend another ingredient or introduce you to another supplier, which doesn't happen as often, but sometimes does. And so lastly, if you're stuck, feel free to reach out to people at the food center, because maybe we might know an ingredient to help you out. Here's my email. And so you can always reach out to me and see if I can find you a supplier or source for something. And definitely, I'd be happy to do that. And so hopefully that covers a bunch of things, questions that you might have, and I'll stick around for the Q&A sessions later on. And if I haven't answered your questions now, hopefully you'll have some for me later.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ricky. Lots happening in the supply chain ingredient world right now. So lots of great tips to keep in mind. Okay, next up is Aaron Hebert, Manager of Skills Development and Food Safety, who will be talking to us about food safety regulations and considerations when starting a food business. Over to you, Aaron. Oh, I think you're on.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thanks so
go.
much, Bailey. Yeah. Can you just let me know, how's the view look with my PowerPoint? Do I need to switch?
It looks good. We can see like your next slides that you have coming up. So it's not in your current slide is not full screen.
Okay, thank you. I will switch to presenter view.
For sure.
There, that should do it.
Yeah, that looks great.
Awesome, great. Okay, well, thanks so much for having me here. It's a pleasure. I'm very excited to not only to present, but to spend the day with everyone here. So I see some familiar names on the roster. So it's great to see such good uptake, and happy to be spending the day here with everyone. So my name is Erin Hebert. I manage the food safety and skills development programs here at the Food Center. And I've been here for 16 years now, or as one of my clients likes to tell people, approximately 102 years, but it's been 16. And so I assist in helping food manufacturers, mostly within the province, but we also do work across Canada. And we assist food manufacturers of all levels to ensure that they are in compliance with the proper regulations and standards, and kind of help folks sort of navigate through that field, because it can be a little bit confusing. So I hope to clarify some of those things for you today, and answer any questions that you might have. And so I think, as we all know, and as has been evidenced if you've watched the news at all in the last 2 days, and seen pictures of empty grocery store shelves, and thought about all of the supply chain issues that we've had happening. All of these things affect our food supply, and we have to take into consideration some food safety issues as well. And so the current climate in the food industry is one of constant change and evolution. And so, you know, we transport food products much further distances than we ever have before. We have different technologies to keep certain food products at the proper temperature, at the proper humidity control. We produce large volumes of products for larger populations of people than we ever have before. And so all of those changes really give us pause to take into consideration some of the food safety issues and the changing food safety risks that we really need to consider. So as this food safety landscape continuously changes, it presents us with some challenges and some opportunities as people in the food industry. And so if you're involved in the food industry anyway, a lot of these changes are indeed challenges. And so we really have to remain vigilant in staying abreast of the current standards and regulations. And so we've seen changes to regulations at a fairly large scale within our own country with the implementation of the Safe Food for Canadians Act and regulations. And so that's brought about some changes and some differences in how we've done things in the past. We have to be able, as stakeholders in the industry, to be able to implement these new systems and comply with the new regulations in a timely manner. And it often causes some human resource and some financial resource challenges. But it also brings about some opportunities. So if we can act upon these changes quickly, if we can you know, ensure that we're complying with new regulations and standards, we often can gain a great marketing advantage over our competitors by doing that. But as I mentioned before, it often does require some increased external resources. So it's a balancing act, as is everything, as you probably well know, being in the manufacturing industry. So there's a lot of changes happening in the food industry constantly. It's, you know, it's never a one size fits all approach. So a lot of folks will call me and they'll say, Erin, you know, how do we make sure that we're following the proper regulations and standards that we need to? And so I often then end up having to send them, you know, a huge line of questions, because it's really dependent on what product you're producing, where you're selling your product, who's buying it, and the inherent risks associated with the product you're producing. So it's not a one size fits all, unfortunately. But, you know, often as producers who live on the prairies, you know, typically what people think of food on the prairies is, we think of cereal grains and we think of livestock, and we are known as the breadbasket of Canada. But that's really changing. It's changed a lot in the last 10 years, I would say, and year by year it continues to change and evolve. And now we can grow such a wide variety of different fruits here. We've got cultivars that have short growing seasons. We have soybean production like we've never had before on the prairies, and many different types of livestock as well. And so our food industry here on the prairies is bright and vibrant as it's ever been. So all of these different types of food products are associated with a different risk level. So if you're milling flour, there are different risks as opposed to if you're producing a meat product, which carries a much higher risk and is far more heavily regulated. So there's a wide variance. There's also a wide variance in standards and regulations that you have to follow depending on where you're selling your product. So for example, farmers market requirements are different than if you're exporting product outside of your provincial borders. Very different regulations are associated with different markets. So we often have folks selling products at farmers markets, which have different regulations than if you're selling something, say, right from your very own farm gate. Or if you're looking at selling something to Walmart or Loblaws, they will impose upon you standards that you have to follow. So some of the requirements we have to follow are regulations, meaning they come with the force of law, and they're required by a government group, and others are standards which are imposed upon us by a third-party non-government group like a Walmart or a Loblaws or a federated co-op. We have to take into consideration different regulations if we're selling, within our province or out of our province, if we're selling within Canada, or if we're exporting to another country. So if we're exporting, say, to China or Japan, we would have to meet the food safety requirements by those countries as well as ours. And there, as I mentioned before, there are many different regulations and guidelines. Some of them are not just market specific, some of them are commodity specific. So I mentioned the comparison between a product that would be very heavily regulated, like a meat product, for example, versus if you're selling a milled product, like a wheat flour, something like that. Very different regulations and guidelines. And often food products are divided into what we call high risk versus low risk products. And so there's a lot of different comparisons that we can make. But typically, a processed food product would be something that would carry a higher risk than say something that isn't as processed, that's sold more as a whole food. Farmers markets typically have their own guidelines and requirements, and I won't get into details about what each public health region requirements are and what each farmers market requirements are. We're located here in Saskatchewan, so I'm familiar with our regulations. I'm not as well versed in public health requirements, say in Manitoba or Alberta, but those are certainly things that we can help you sort through if you need. Provincial or federal requirement or regulations are also things that we need to take into consideration depending on where we're selling our product. So if you're an up-and-coming food processor, these are questions that you sort of need to sort out, and it will certainly affect your business plan. And so, there's short-term and long-term goals that you might have as to where you're going to sell your product. So if you're looking at selling at a local market within your province, you need to look at your provincial regulations. And also, I always encourage people to talk to the retail chains. If you're looking at selling at a retail chain, to link up with the folks at Sobeys or Federated Co-op or Walmart and ask them what their requirements are, because that can greatly impact how you produce your product, where you produce your product, and where you do end up selling it. If you're looking at selling at farmers markets, get in touch with the people who run the farmers market. Most farmers markets are really good actually on their websites at posting where their what the requirements are for what products. They have to follow the provincial regulations for food safety, depending on what risk level your food product is in. So you need to look at if you're selling it at a local market within your province. If you're looking at exporting your product out of your province, that's when the big changes come. That's when you are usually subject to federal regulations. And again, those federal regulations aren't a one size fits all. It's dependent on the risk level of your product. So meat products are in a different category, egg products, honey, processed foods. So if you're looking at selling at a local farmer's market, definitely the public health requirements will be the main governing set of regulations that you need to follow. Oftentimes we see things like baked products or certain items that can be are lower risk can often be processed in your own home kitchen. So something like a jam or a fudge or pierogies. Products outside of that list or something that might contain meat might be at a higher level. They might have to be processed in what we would call a licensed kitchen. In Saskatchewan, if you're following public health guidelines, somebody has to have some food safety training, and it's typically what we refer to as a food safe course. And of course, you have to meet your provincial labeling requirements. So this is, sorry, I've highlighted Saskatchewan here, but I just want to impress upon you the importance of following your own provincial regulations. If you're looking at exporting product out or ingredients outside of your outside of the provincial borders that you're in, you will have to follow, again, those federal regulations. And so there's a link to the federal site here. But again, if you're having trouble navigating through that, I'm happy to provide you with assistance any way you need. And then there are labeling requirements. So all that to say, really, is that the regulations and the standards that we must follow are as diverse as the markets we sell to and the commodities that we produce. So it can be a little bit of a spider web to work your way through, but certainly is not something unachievable or horribly difficult. There are lots of good resources out there with your provincial governments. And as Ricky said, here at the Food Center, we've got a wealth of knowledge here within our staff. So we're happy to help in any way that we can. And this is a link. We've got a couple of online food safety training opportunities if you're interested in going to these websites and looking at our training opportunities for good manufacturing practices or for an introductory HACCP course as well. So I'll be available for the day for Q&A, and you've also got the coordinates at which you can reach me at any time right here on this slide. So thanks so much.
Wonderful. Thanks, Erin. Food safety can sometimes be overlooked in the excitement of planning your food business, but it is the most crucial thing to make sure that you have an excellent handle on. So definitely make sure that it's a priority for you. Third in line here is Sarah Louie. Sarah's been recently promoted to Director of Product Innovation at the Food Center. She'll be sharing an intro to her wealth of knowledge on food product development. Over to you, Sarah. Yeah.
Thank you, Bailey. Good morning, everyone. Let me turn on my slide. Can you see? So
Yeah,
Bailey, you see my
great,
slide.
Sarah.
Okay, perfect. So today's topic, there are so many things I want to talk about, but they only give me 15 minutes. If I have to talk, I can talk for many, many days, but I'm going to keep it very short right now. The first thing is for this presentation, we want to focus on the product development consideration when you start your new business or food business. So where are you? Are you having a product idea? Or do you have a family recipe that you have been passed on? And everyone says so good, where I can buy it? It's very common people ask for that kind of questions. And or are you selling your product in the farmer market and or local store like a Sesame store or Pitchfork market, right? So those are local store, but are you ready to go for a next level? Or do you have any buyer suddenly come and knock on the door and say, hey, I want more of your product. Can you supply it? So we want to know where you are at, and we can advise you how to start your project or your product to next level. So before you move on to market, or maybe before you put your product into market, sometimes I see client, I will firstly ask them is it a Me Too product? If there is a lot of product, a lot of, for example, a lot of granola bar in the market, in the shelf there, are you trying to put the same thing in the market there? Why the consumer want to buy your product and not buying the one next to you? So sometimes we're coming out to do business or make product. It's a hobby, but also you want to make money at the same time. And so there's a couple of things we have to highlight is that sometimes people will buy your stuff because it's organic product, maybe because you have a healthier choice, or maybe it tastes better simply. Simply is because it's healthier. And also maybe have a lot of local ingredient there, because especially with COVID right now, it's tough to get the ingredient from outside of country or whatever. So it's nice to know that, you know, the product is growing here and we can support the local people here too. So I think really important to know where you're at before you go to market. And some of the key points I highlight in this slide is the plant protein. There's a lot of people talk about plant-based protein. So how to, when we grow a lot of the plant-based protein, for example, pea protein and chickpea protein and lentil protein, how to incorporate into food. Not only the meat product have meat protein, so sometimes the meat product also incorporate with the plant-based protein to enhance the product. Not only have the meat, also have the plant protein go with the flow, right? And high fiber, many people are looking for high fiber and also looking for low sodium and low sugar. It's all because people understand all this thing is related to health. Okay. So a lot of people are familiar with the picture right here, the chef putting a pinch of the salt when he's cooking. And it's also very common to see this kind of picture, not only the chef. I'm not saying that only people in the kitchen. For example, you have a grandma recipe that pass on or mom recipe. So sometimes you want to jot it down, but then the older generation, they don't really have the recipe because they make it so many times, they can just look at the product and say, hey, I just need more water when I'm making the dough. And it's not enough flavor, and then find out something in the shell and put it in. But how are you going to reproduce that when people love it? And I was talking to a client one time, I say, we can't get grandma or mom come and do production every time and then say, hey, is it the dough look okay? Or consistency is all right, you know? So we can't do that when we're making a 5 kilogram pot of jam, let's say, in the kitchen. Now we're going to scale up to 600 kilogram. How are you going to do that? You can't just look at a pinch of this and pinch of that, right? So we have to have measurement. When we come to measurement in the food industry, we're not talking about cup, not talking about tablespoon or teaspoon, because let's say if you want to make pierogi and I'm going to make a big batch, I'm going to make 20 cup of flours. So you're counting 1 cup, 2 cup, 3 cup and say, oops, don't talk to me, you know, I'm counting. And it's really hard to keep track, and then you lost count, and then what can you do? The batch is not consistent. So what we do is we suggest client to measure by the volume, by the weight, the kilogram, and have everything measured out and calculate out. So all this thing is try to make the product consistency. Product consistency is very, very important when you come to scale up processing. Just like Ricky said, there's ingredient selections, there are different ingredients supplied. For example, pea protein, and there are so many different suppliers. You can buy pea protein or even cocoa powder. There was different amounts of cocoa butter in it, and so different bitterness and smoothness in there too. So if you buy from supply A, and then next time you want to buy from supply B, you want to make sure the ingredient is interchangeable before you put into productions. And also consumer, when they buy whatever from you, they love it. They love the experience, so they want to go to a shelf and buy the same food again, and they want to have the same experience. So if your product is not consistent, and then one time it tastes good, next time it doesn't taste good, what's happening, right? So it's very important to have everything consistent. And also ingredient availability. And because you put in the shelf, you're selling for $2.50 a jar, let's say, and you can change your product cost every time because the ingredient cost is different. And then you have to change your selling price. It's really hard when you go to the retail store. So you have to make sure the ingredient that you select to use for the formulation is available throughout the years, or you can access to it for a larger quantity for your productions. And all this thing is affecting the quality. For example, the ingredient flour, let's say the wheat flour. This wheat flour, the particle size is smaller. This particle size is coarser. So each one, the amount of water absorption is different, and the mixing time may be different. So how you going to control your product to have a good quality? So ingredient selection and also how you control the batch to batch to have consistency is very important. The other thing I like to highlight is before you scale up, time is money. We all know that. How you shorten the processing time. Let's say garlic. You have garlic, and I say, oh, the recipe say 2 cloves of garlic. And now that go back to the measurement. My clove of garlic may be that big. Your clove of garlic may be that small, you know. So how you control the clove of garlic, right? So you have to do the weight and stuff. But if you, let's say you're asking for roast garlic in your formulations. So traditional in the kitchen, you will roast your garlic, take off the skin, and then mash it all up. And then the amount of roasting, roasting time will have different amounts of roasting flavor in the product. So how you make it consistent every time, the big clove versus a small clove, you have different amounts of roasting too. So when you go to processing in the commercial, we will shy away from the real, the way how you roast garlic. We can buy the roast garlic powder. We can buy the roast garlic extract to put the consistency, the flavor, the pungency, everything all in a product that is concentrated already, that you don't need to go for all the processing. One thing we provide service is a sensory evaluation in our center here. And so we have a sensory booth, individual sitting for client, for the staff and or people that invite to come and taste the product. So the tray of product going in with a number code, they don't know what they're eating. It's a miniature snapshot of the market. The product going to the market, you know, where people accept your product flavor, color, and overall acceptability. And so this is a good time. If the people taste the product and they say, hey, I don't like it, there's no sweetness, and I can't taste the product. Now, once you got all the feedback, before you go to market and make a large-scale production, this is the time to refine your formulation, and before you print out your label, you can make all the changes. Another thing I want to share with you is healthy is not equal to delicious. I have clients say, oh, I want the product is high fiber, high protein, low sugar, and have this and this and that, everything. Want to hit all the client in one product. Is ideally, if we can do something like that, that's perfect. But when you have no salt, no flavor, no fat, no sugar, everything just in a high fiber, we might as well, you know, the product will taste like cardboard if I exaggerate a little bit. So how you get something that is tasty and also healthy. So working with Food Center, we are a very creative group here. We can help you out and select the right ingredient and also guide you to the right directions. And the other thing beside the sensory evaluation, you can get feedback is the product feedback you can get from friends and family, but sometimes the friend don't want to hurt the feelings. Sometimes it's hard to tell you exactly what they think. Or sometimes you get coworker too and public survey. So why we have to do testing? There's a couple of layers why we do testing. One is a regulatory, and the other one is for safety and product quality. Now, regulatory, for example, you're making jam. If you want to call the product called jam, you have to meet the regulations. You have to have a certain amount of bricks. You have to have 65 bricks, and you have to have a certain amount of fruit in the product in order to call jam. If not, then you have to call spread. And also spread is a lower sugar too. So it doesn't mean the spread is not high quality. It depends on which market you're targeting, right? Now, food safety is another one that we have to focus. Most of the time, the dehydrated product like fruit and also for jerky, you need to you have to determine the water activity. Water activity is available water for bacteria to grow. So you have to have the product lower than 0.85 for example, meat product to prevent any pathogenic bacteria can grow in the product. And that's why your jerky can stay in the room temperature without any concern about food poisoning, right? So you have to have the certain amount of water activity, not too high. And then product pH is another one that we use a lot in the food business because bacteria, the pathogenic bacteria can grow above pH 4.6. So you want to control your pH, your product acid. You put more vinegar or lemon juice, you can bring down the pH, so prevent the bacteria to grow. Another thing what we can do is called preservative. You probably hear a lot of yeast and mold inhibitor, to prevent the yeast and mold grow in your bread, in your jam. But doesn't mean that, product is, it can prevent the bacteria grow. You can put a lot. There's legal limit. There's amount of the preservative you can put in the food product is regulated. I have a client in the past, making a sausage. And thinking, okay, kill salt, use nitrite, and give the product, make the sausage turn red, and then say, oh, because there's a magic powder, I'm going to put a little bit more. That is a danger zone because somehow, if you're putting too much, you can create it's not good for the consumer. It's over the limit. The other thing what we can do is processing time and temperature, controlling it, and the other one is packaging atmosphere. If you don't want to put yeast and mold inhibitor, you can control by packaging, changing the packaging. You can use vacuum packaging, you can use gas flush. That's why the bacteria cannot grow. Some of the bacteria cannot grow in a anaerobic environment, which is there's no oxygen in the packaging. And also storage temperature condition is very important to extend the product shelf life. In the shelf life testing, why you need to do shelf life testing? Most of the time when you're selling in the farmer market, product is frozen or consumed very fast, which is okay. But when the consumer, you sell in the retail store, anything less than 90-day shelf life, you have to have a best before date in it. Or else you have to have a expiry date. And in a regulatory, you have to have best before date, but less than 90 days. Expiry date is a voluntary, but most of the time when you sell in Sobeys or selling some kind of big store, they want you to have an expiry date. And also consumer, when they buy from the store, they don't consume right away to put in their own pantry. They have a way to see the shelf life. And when you put in best before date or expiry date, there is a specific date format you have to follow, which is I put it on the right-hand side of the slide. There you can see this one is say January 30th, 2017 is best before date. So you have the English and French here. And if your expiry date, you have to use the same format, right? Like the way how it is here. You have to have the year and the month and the date. And the month is all have abbreviation here. And then the food label regulations. And oh, I missed out a little bit, going too fast. Okay, the other thing is shelf stable product like jerky, dry snack, granola bar, and also for dry dehydrated fruit. And all those things have is considered as a shelf stable because a lot of people will say, what does shelf stable mean? That means you can put in the room temperature without spoilage. Now, another thing example is a potato chips. And sometimes you see potato chip is a pillow bag there. In the pillow bag, how they preserve the product is so fresh and not rancid over a couple of months. But when you deep fry something at home, things get rancid so fast, right? Or open the bag, is get rancid very fast. Because when the pillowcase, most of the time they will put nitrogen flushed, take out the oxygen in the air that is packaging in the potato chips there. So this way the lipid cannot be oxidized and cannot get rancidity during the storage. Yeah. So for any product that is perishable, it's very important. We have to test the microbial testing to confirm the product have that kind of shelf life. We can't just guesstimate. The other thing when you're doing product, before you go to market, it's very important to have the label, proper label. And proper label regulation is a big topic. I'm going to just keep it very short for 1 minute or so. But if you need to get more information, I would suggest you go to that website that is in this slide here, or contact us anytime. So there's a couple of things in the label, and it's mandatory. For example, the common name, you have to say cookie, jerky, or sausage. You can't just have the flavor of the product. You don't even have the name of the product. You have to have identity of the product. And then the next quantity, ingredient listing. You have to make sure you write down the list out all the allergens people get sick from it. And sometimes component of the ingredients very important. For example, you're using a soy sauce. And that soy sauce have a wheat in it, have soy, and have the salt content in, and everything in it, right? So, or else, for example, using the coconut, shred coconut, and most of the time, shred coconut have sulfite, and sulfite is another allergen ingredient. People consume more than 50 milligram and also getting sick too, right? So, and also gluten, for example, people cannot handle gluten if they have celiac disease, so they can't have more than 10 ppm of the gluten. So all the things have to label out, and mustard is a new one too. So we have to have nutritional labeling and also storage instruction, company name, and best before date. So nutritional labeling, here we have the old format and new format. The new format, the compliance date is December 14, 2021. And this is a new format on the right-hand side. This is the new format. The food center does have a database analysis to help you to develop something like this. So how to move from POM A to POM B? So we're going to give you all the help in the food center. When you contact us, we will have all the technical staff to help you out. And by telling you all the above informations, I want to briefly tell you what we can do in the product development department here. We have a group of food scientists, chefs, and also processing specialists who work with you when you come to food center. We will help you develop the formulation or reverse engineer or improve your formulations before you go to market. We conduct the sensory evaluation, nutritional labeling, shelf life, and also help you out in the application and any funding applications. And also when we develop product here, it's more like a one-stop shop. When we develop product, not only stop in the kitchen, we think about how to scale up in the pilot plant because we're familiar with all the commercial equipment, and we're working with the processing director, which is, you're going to talk into Brev Chesky the next presentations, and he will help you out. So I'm going to stop here. Thank you. Can't hear you, Bailey.
Sorry, I was just saying that you have 1 more minute if you have anything, final words you want to say.
Okay, somehow I put the timer, the ding, 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 I just, ooh.
No, if you are done, that's fine.
Oh, I'm done, I'm good. So if you guys have any product idea or innovation idea, you feel free to come see us, and we're here to help. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. It's such a big, broad topic, and we definitely tried to constrain your time this morning for the conference. So yes, there's a lot of things to consider with the product development. So if you have any questions, feel free to contact either the Awesome program, and we'll put you in touch with Sarah or the relevant expert that your question relates to. So thanks so much, Sarah. Next up, Mr. Brev Chesky. Okay, Brev is the operations manager for processing at the food center's pilot plant, and he is going to share some inspiration for what's possible on a processing slightly scaled up stage at the food center and what you need to bridge the gap to be ready for that point. So take it away, Brev. You're just on mute right now.
Unmute. All right. Thank you very much. I'm going to try and share this screen, and of course it's not at the beginning of it, but so let's figure out how I can go back to the beginning. Oops. Away. Well, that's working out good for me so far. All right, one more time.
Yeah, just try sharing your screen again.
Yeah, let's do that. Share, and then go down here.
Okay.
But I need to get to the beginning. That's my trouble. Why won't it go right to the beginning?
I'm not, yeah. Almost there, I think.
There.
You go. Perfect.
All right.
All right.
That's a good way to start.
No
Morning,
problem.
everybody. So I'm third in line here, and some of the stuff's come up in Ricky's and Sarah's presentation, so we'll go through it quickly. First, I'm the operations manager at the Saskatchewan Food Industry Development Center. I look after the pilot plant facility on campus. What is a food product development center? We provide the resources, equipment, and facilities for entrepreneurs to manufacture food products in a commercial environment. So we have a space that you can rent and make your products. There's other facilities similar to ours. One's in Leduc, in Alberta, and the other one's in Portage la Prairie, Manitoba. The Manitoba one has taken on some different directions here too. So you'd have to check with them and see which portions they're still doing in terms of working with small food processors. Benefits to the entrepreneurs, we're a cost-effective way to get into market. You don't need to invest into your equipment. You can focus more on your business. You can determine success at whether your product's successful at a smaller level before you have to go on to purchasing equipment or your own building. And you'll have expertise or access to all the expertise here that you've heard from earlier today. Are you ready for a food center? And I know there's been some previous talk a little bit about health inspected commercial kitchens and things, so I won't go too deep, but if you're not quite there for the food center and renting on our facility, there is health inspected kitchens that you can get a hold of, and maybe you can use them in a time when they're not in use for their purpose, whether it be a church kitchen or maybe a restaurant that's not open on certain days or at night, and you can use theirs. The other option is co-packer, and co-packers are few and far between, and typically they're very busy making their own products, and if you're a competing product, they're not as interested. So again, packaging, you're at a small level, you may be into wholesale suppliers at the small level, and now with the online services, you can buy a carton or 2 cartons or 10 cartons of jars, some cartons. You can get small runs of labels made locally. So equipment wise, if you just need a small grinder or a chopper or things like that, you can look to some of the restaurant supply companies and they can help you out. Ingredient sourcing, you'll end up at that stage with somebody like a Cisco or Gordon Food Services, or maybe even the wholesale club to get you through at those kinds of levels. So on to manufacturing at the food center. Things for consideration. Have you investigated your market? And I know Sarah's had some talks about this, and again, what makes your product unique? So if you're making a salsa or a jerky, you better have an idea of what makes your product unique, because there's a lot of them out there. In terms of your ingredients, you'd have to arrange for shipping of all those into our facility, and then think about what's happening with your product once it's finished. How are you getting these products to the store? If you're a frozen product, you've got this supply system that's interesting to get your products to store at the frozen state. If you're refrigerated, similar, maybe not quite as onerous. We can help you with arranging for storage facilities. Unfortunately, a food center has limited storage capacities, and the turnover must be fairly quick after production. Do you have enough cash flow for your ingredients in your packaging. So there's minimum order quantities for everything you'll buy from suppliers. And, you know, if you have to buy 10,000 jars at a time, do you have the cash up front to hold that kind of quantity? Also packaging materials, like bags, etc., things like that. Ingredients also, you need to make sure you have the ability to pay for your ingredients and to pay for the storage of those ingredients. So if you're buying 2 pallets full of chickpea flour, but you only need half a pellet for your production, where is the product getting stored before your next production? And again, the main thing, are you ready to move up to these large quantities? So if you're making a jam, a salsa, a juice, anything in a jar, can you handle 2,000 jars of the product? That's what you're going to get in a day, roughly, you know, depending on the product and how long it takes to get to the point where you put it in a jar. So you need to be able to look at where you're going to store those in the time before you've got it all shipped out. And if you're looking at snacks or granola bars or energy bars, a day capability could be 5,000 bars. So again, you need to make sure that you've got the volumes for that and the storage conditions to look after that. So our interim processing facility, the pilot plant, is on campus. We're a regulated CFIA inspected facility. We have lots of designations from meat to fish to dairy. We're also HACCP recognized. So you'll see that from a lot of your customers that want HACCP recognition. We're organic certified, so you can produce organic products, halal licensed. So if you have that market in mind, we're also FDA approved for certain food products, which means we're capable, or you are capable of shipping to the US with certain products. We have a diverse range of equipment that we can set up for you. You know, we may use equipment one day for producing a jam or a jelly, grinding fruit. The next day, we may be grinding something totally different, from chickpeas to meat, or something like that. So we have hundreds of pieces of equipment, but we always are thinking, what else could we use this equipment for a different than typical food product? With each rental day at the facility, you get a trained operator, so they can help you with all the equipment, helping with your process setup, and then additional staff can be used from our processing facility. Obviously, if you have your own staff that you can supply and they meet the requirements needed to get into the food center, that's a much cheaper way to do it. Friends and family, they should come cheap, hopefully. Steps to getting started. So Sarah had talked about the first portion of the slide this morning and talked about getting through the product development, and we will inherit you at the scale up test spot. So we'd like to do a 20-liter batch or a 20 to 30 kg batch, depending on the product, and run it through everything that's going on. So from a lab bench, we need to get it through some commercial equipment and make sure it passes through those and the product comes out in the way that you got it from your lab bench and what was your finished product idea. So, and then from there, once we get that scale up test done, we will start with label development and reviewing all the packaging materials, cartons, things like that, shelf life studies, and then you're ready to move on to a full-scale production. So packaging considerations. Obviously, there's millions of different kinds of packages out there now. From jars to plastic has really taken over, these flexible films that make all the packages on your chip bags, etc. We've done all sorts of things with that kind of stuff. So obviously it prolongs your shelf life if you have the right package. Will it stand up to modified atmospheres? Is it something that can be hot filled so that you get a vacuum on a jar? Those are the kind of things we work through with you. We have lots of different kinds of packaging equipment. The one shown here is packaging a cheese or a egg puff, which, you know, much like a cheesy or something like that. It's a similar machine. can pack roasted chickpeas or anything like that, lots of grains, etc. We've done that kind of thing. So this slide just shows various processes at the food center. If you look in this one, I've got my pointer on. Here we're packaging boneless ribs. So this is a roll stock packaging machine. It actually forms a pocket out of a flat film, and then you fill it. It adds another layer of film over top, draws a vacuum, or it can actually draw a vacuum and then put an inert gas back in, or a gas that has some properties that may help with the shelf life. Here we're looking at jam filling, and I've got some video for that for you later on that. Again, more jam filling, some granola bar processing, and I've got some video for that. This shows a lot the setup for bar processing within our facility. Bottom left corner, we look at some bacon that we've made, come out of the smokehouse, and here's sausage just being hung, ready to go into the smokehouse. So after grinding and formulating, big processing room here that hasn't been filled with equipment at that moment. And then in the bottom right corner, you can even see we have small packaging equipment. So this one actually produces those little jam packages or peanut butter packages that you would find when you go to a restaurant. So let's look at a typical process. Jam, sausage, other beverages go through similar processes, not exactly the same. So the typical steps, wash and prepare your raw incoming ingredients, cut, chop, grind fruit, vegetables. We weigh the fruit and dry ingredients, and then we go through a mixing process if you need salts or seasonings, etc. in there. And then we heat the mixture. We want to heat the mixture so that when we fill it into the jars, we get a good vacuum seal that extends the shelf life. Then from heating the mixture, we pump the product into a large holding tank, and then we fill it into containers. So we'll show you a video of that. So here it's in a kettle. Kettles can hold up to 500 liters here at a time. So, and here's a typical piston filler, filling jars of, this looks like a topping or pastry filling. So the jars are filled by this. We have an automated filler too, but the speeds on this piston filler, and depending on the product and how thick it is, certain fillers work for certain products better. Here she places a cap on a jar, then it goes through a series of rollers and rubber wheels that actually tighten the cap on the jar. Then it goes through a labeler where it puts out a label, and then the label gets rolled around your jar. And you should see finished product. So here's Saskatchewan company. Okay, so next typical process is energy bar, granola bars. I know there's lots out there. We've made lots and lots of kinds. Typical for granola bar processing is to get up to 5,000 done in a shift. So we'll go through a little video on that. Typical process for granola bar making is you warm up your syrup, whether it be corn syrup or honey or a sugar solution, something that's going to thicken. Then you weigh up your dry ingredients, and then we mix the two together and we make what we call a dough. And I'll show you step forward from there. So here's a dough going in through a series of rollers on the bar making machine, and it gets it down to the thickness you want. Okay, and it presses it out so it's a full width. Now you see a series of circular knives there. Gets cut into strips by these knives, into 5 strips. And then we have a knife that goes up and down, which cuts it for length. That length and the thickness will determine your weight of your bar. So have a look at that. This one's typical granola bar. Here's a packaging machine. So you can see the speed at which the packaging machine runs. So somebody places the bars in the fingers, the bars go through the film gets formed around the package, seals on the bottom, and then it goes through here where it seals the ends and puts it out. We have access to nitrogen, which we can fill the bar with, helps fill the bar wrapper with to help stop the rancidity issues. And here's a finished product, one that we made for the food bank to help them out. Here's another quick video of a sampling machine, or a dumpling machine sampling. Samosa pierogi machine. It's new to us. We've done a little bit of work on it. Unfortunately, the video is one of our very first videos done, so we'll have a quick look at it and we'll go through. So basically, we make the filling, we make the dough, we put them into two different hoppers, and the machine actually forms the shape and fills it and puts it out. So this machine is capable. We've timed it with a dumpling test we were doing, and we were actually at a piece a second. So, you know, to do 10,000 dumplings in a day is probably not, how is it? It's very feasible. Okay, so next we have a couple of pouch filling machines, and we'll go through those quickly. One's a liquid pouch filler, and the other one is a pouch filler for solid products. So this one we're using to fill sanitizer. So it's pre-made pouch, goes through a filler, gets a cap put on it, tightens it up, and puts out the product onto a conveyor. So again, we've played with some barbecue sauces, etc. This was something we did at the beginning of the pandemic, and we produced hand sanitizer to give away and to help all sorts of industries. We produced well over 100,000 pouches like that. So, and then lastly, we have stand-up pouch. So when you look at your typical pouch like this, stand-up pouches, and some pouches that don't have the gusset on the bottom too, you'll see that they're filled with everything from cheese puffs to dehydrated and sweetened berries. And that's what we're doing in this video. So it actually takes a pouch off a stack, pulls it over, opens it up, actually weighs the product, drops it in, and you can see it's actually shaking the product too to make sure it goes down. And then it comes out the other side, and you have finished Saskatchewan products again. So that is my presentation. So again, once the question period comes up, if you need to talk about processing or get a hold of me or somebody else at the food center, they'll direct you to myself when it comes time to think about packaging processing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brev. It's the pilot plant is very similar to Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. It's kind of impossible to walk through there without getting inspired about different products that could happen. I think we have more videos if you're interested in seeing more of the types of equipment and how the processes work. We can drop a link to those videos on YouTube. So, okay. Thanks, everyone. On to the Q&A. All the food center experts, if you could keep your videos on for this section, and then we can kind of chat as a group. Some questions will likely be obvious for one person, but if anyone else wants to weigh in, feel free to unmute yourself and do so. Okay. Opening the Q&A, Marguerite says, knowing that our labeling changes are coming up in 2022, is there any tips to give companies on preparing for the change? So I think Sarah, you maybe touched on this a little bit, but if you want to elaborate.
Yes, food regulations. I would suggest to keep checking on the website to find the update. But sometimes going through the website is kind of overwhelming. We understand that. So feel free to contact us, and we can help review the label too. We do have a fee for charge to review your label and advise you what to do. But if it's something very simple, just ask a simple question where to find information. We can guide you there too, and also answer some small question too. If you really want us to go through the whole process on the review label, then we will charge on that portion. Other than that, we can help out. Maybe in the food center, maybe we will have a labeling seminar coming up too.
Okay, yeah, good idea.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Next question. Do you ever use nitrogen flushing for things like syrup or spread? And yeah, maybe just elaborate a little bit on that technology if people need a reminder.
That one, Brev, do you want to answer this one?
Sure. So nitrogen flushing has specific uses. So, and the machine has to be capable of nitrogen flushing. So you can't just have a big hose of nitrogen going over an empty jar and try to get a lid on it. So when you look at the granola bars, as that package is formed, it's actually filled with nitrogen. And if you look at the other packaging machine I also showed, that has a hose that goes in, and once the product's dumped, then you'll shoot in some nitrogen. You'll try to displace as much oxygen or air as possible. Same on packaging for meat products where you see a pillow pack of sausage. So the question was directed at jars. And so doing nitrogen in jars or say a bottle is a little tougher. In the industry that does oils, they use liquid nitrogen. So I've worked in this process before in the flax industry. And so the flax oil gets filled into a jar, then a drop of liquid nitrogen gets dropped in, and then the cap goes on. So as the liquid nitrogen hits the flax oil, it's the warm air flashes off that nitrogen and makes it into a gas, and then the caps goes on quickly thereafter. So it's a very unique process, and it's the equipment's fairly expensive, and then you're stuck with dealing with large cylinders of liquid nitrogen. So it's an interesting process, but if you need to discuss further, I can help you.
Yeah, if you have a specific product that you're trying to develop with that, definitely reach out to Brev. Okay, next question. Do you have graduation planning as part of your pilot work? I'm personally not really sure what graduation planning is, so.
Yeah. So yeah, like, you know, for us, obviously you work with Sarah's group, and then you move up to the pilot plant, and the pilot plant will help you continue on. And as you grow, if you need to move on to your own facility, or you find a co-packer that's maybe capable, will certainly help you with that moving on. We don't want to compete against private industry. We're here to get you going. Okay. And if you can move on, although we're not going to kick you out the door in a hurry either, but if you have another way to move on, we'll certainly help you and help with the transfer of everything. I hope that answers the question. I'm not 100% sure.
Sounds right to me. Okay, next question. Is there a range of how much someone should have money-wise from product development to getting a product ready for selling when working with the food center? I'm just starting and have only been selling out of my home at the moment. Thank you for your time.
That is a very tricky question. Depends on how difficult or complexity of your product. If it's very simple, just say, you know, there's separation on the oil and making salad dressing, let's say. So we fix the problem in very easy, very short time. And so we won't charge that much. Food Center is a non-profit organization. So we try to keep the cost low if we can. And so if you have a formulation ready and not much thing to refine, it won't cost that much money. And then after that, we try to look through the ingredients. In my presentation, I said time and money, right? So we'll select the right ingredient for you to cut down the processing time before you go scale up to try to help you to make money. Yeah, so that is a very general question. Depends on you want to buy a big house or small house. And so the price is different. We can talk in the private conversation and then review where you're at and then guide you which market you're going, how big you want, just like what kind of size of the house you want.
Yeah, for sure. It'll be dependent on the product. And I think Sarah and Brev are both willing to do a bit of a consult and then give a quote that's more tailored to your specific product. Go ahead, Sarah.
As also we have funding available, not us giving funding. We have in touch with a lot of funding agents, and we'll let you know what kind of funding will fit to your project, and you could potentially get the funding. We'll guide you and give you the information.
Right. And your services are available to anyone. They don't need to be through the Awesome program necessarily, and you don't necessarily need to be from Saskatchewan either.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Next question. To create a drink product for the farmer's market here, will I need a nutritional label? If so, is it something I can determine, or will I need to have the product tested to determine the nutritional values?
That is another good question too. When you sell in the farmer market, you do not need to have nutritional labeling. And if you do want to put it in, it's just for your consumer to understand, how many sugar in your product, or how many specific vitamin or mineral that you have. But when you sell out of the farmer market and it's packaged in a bottle and you trigger the label, so which means you have to have nutritional labeling and have to using the new format, because it's coming to regulation. You have to have it using the new labeling, nutritional labeling. And to test it, you have two ways to do nutritional labeling. One is to send out the sample to laboratory to do test analysis. And I think the price probably close to $800 to $1,200, depends on which lab you're going to. And for us, we don't do that kind of testing. We're using a database analysis because we know that sugar is sugar, flour is flour. And when you're making a dough, let's say, you just put amount of water and oil, flour, everything fixed. So we're using a database to calculate out. But when we're using a database calculate out, it's not something that you just find on the internet. We buy the specific database that meet using the USDA data and also Canadian Health Canada data to put it in. And then we generate by calculate how much cook loss when you're cooking the jam, let's say how much cook loss. We put that into factor. The more you have, the more cook loss you have, the more nutrients, the product is more concentrate, right? When the product is more concentrate, you have high nutrients. So we will factor all this information to put in the database and calculate something closer to the actual product for you.
Yeah, that makes sense, Sarah. And probably if you are just getting started at the farmer's market, if you don't need a nutritional label, take that opportunity to get some customer feedback and then finalize your formulation, and then go ahead and invest in the nutritional labeling, I think would likely be a good route for someone who's brand new, rather than investing in the nutritional label and then having to change because people don't like or want it more sweet or something like that. So, okay, great. One other question that has come up. Many businesses are moving to direct to consumer sales and selling from their website. So wondering about regulatory things to consider here. I don't know, Erin, if this one is maybe specifically for to you, but maybe you could speak to it with that kind of newer mode of selling. What kinds of complications come up with that shipping outside of your province?
So it again, it depends on the product. So, but regardless of what the product is, if you're selling outside of your provincial borders, you will need to meet some of the new Safe Food for Canadians regulations. So there are different labeling requirements for you, as Sarah mentioned. And then you may also be required to have a food safety plan in place. It might not be, depending on the product, a full-blown what we call HACCP system, but you'll need to address the highest food safety risks to your product in some kind of a written format. And regardless of what the product is, you definitely have to have a traceability program in place and a recall program in place. So, but otherwise it depends on the product. CFIA has this an excellent new it's fairly user-friendly format on their website, and it's an interactive approach to determining what so you'd enter it, you answer a series of questions: what kind of product you sell, where are you selling it, how is it packaged, etc. And it will basically give you the information that you need to start writing your preventative control plan, is what they call it. So, but if you have any issues or any specific questions that you'd like me to answer, I'm happy to have a conversation with you outside of this format.
Perfect. Yeah, because it, like you said, it will be different for each product, and we will get those links that you mentioned, Erin, and we'll put them in our resource guide that we're going to send out to everyone, so everyone can have that handy. I think I have time for one more question here. What have you seen makes a successful product versus an unsuccessful product? Have you noticed some common denominators?
Successful product that will fly off the shelf.
Mm-hmm. I guess maybe another way of phrasing it might be like, what are some of the common roadblocks that people come across when they are starting this process, and what to prepare for?
Well, I think in my portion, what I'm thinking is when people come to me and then we ask other questions, sometimes we think that it's not ready. We'll ask them to go to your shelf, go to your store, take a look what you want, and look into internet, and then try to buy the competitor and then taste the product first. The more you understand the market, where you're at, and then you understand what you should target, who is your target group, and then you certify, and then the people buy it, right? Then you get a higher chance of success. But also, I like all the questions here today. They ask all the legit question, like regulation changing, how I'm going to prepare myself, how much cost from beginning to end. I think if you have think through all this question, you're in the right path to get success. And then make sure meet all the food safety, like Erin say, and then Ricky talk about all the ingredients, how you buy what kind of thing you have to consider when you're picking up the ingredients. And then with Brev helping you to do processing, I think you're in the right place, and working with food center is 50% of the successful right away. This is what I'm thinking.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. And I think, okay, one more quick one. Ricky, you may be able to answer this one. Can you order samples for HMMA meat products?
Yeah, Sam, I think we've touched base already by email already. Typically, high moisture meat analog products are developed by the clients themselves. If you find a company that currently sells this type of product, then you can reach out directly, but they're typically designed for an application in mind. So yes, we're able to kind of develop the HMMA with you. And then it's people like Sarah that turns something that looks kind of like a leather belt, which is not super appealing, into tasty products that are kind of like boneless ribs, or like a vegan jerky, or vegan this or that. And so if you want to pick someone's brain that you should pick on, is definitely Sarah in terms of how to turn these products into tasty formats.
Yeah, for those people that don't understand what HMMA is, a high moisture meat analog, and they're using it a lot in the plant-based meat product.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, everyone. This has been great, and we are going to move into our break now. So anyone who needs to stretch their legs or grab a coffee, we'll meet back here at 10:40. So thank you so much, everybody, and we will reconvene soon. Okay, welcome back, everybody. We are going to have Shanuka come on and do the announcements of the Achievement Awards and some other exciting things going on at Awesome. So I'm just going to step out here and Shanuka is going to pop in.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. As Bailey mentioned, my name is Shanuka and I'm the program manager of Awesome at the Food Center. Thank you so much for joining us. I see a mix of new faces or new names and familiar community members. So that is really lovely to see. And if you are new, I definitely encourage you to fill out a membership form because that'll have your email and then we can add you to a mailing list. And that's how we keep in touch with all of our members across the 3 provinces. I do want to take a moment to thank the first panel of speakers who are also my coworkers. I've wanted to do this panel for a very long time because it's incredible how much knowledge is at the food center just in the hallway that is right beside me. So I hope everyone took notes and that the information was helpful. So as Bailey mentioned, I have a few announcements from Awesome. I'll just advance this slide here. So one of the reasons why Awesome exists is one of our fundamental pillars is to recognize women who are in agri-food in the Canadian prairies. Preaching to the choir, the representation of women in agri-food in the Canadian prairies is severely underrepresented. It's not very strong. So one of Awesome's core mandates is to profile all of our incredibly resourceful, brave, talented members who are making money and breaking glass ceilings in our country. So last year was our first Awesome Achievement Awards initiative, and we recognized several women across the prairies, and we put out some videos about them. And this year we're doing the same thing. So you can see the list of women on the side on our screen there. Hopefully you recognize some, and if you do, I would definitely encourage you to reach out to them and congratulate them. This is definitely one of the hardest business sectors, right? Food and beverage manufacturing. It's not an easy journey relatively at all. So trust me when I say these women they're brave, they're resourceful, and they're incredibly talented. Instead of doing videos, because I feel like everyone's a little webinared out, we decided to put together a podcast series. So each of the women will have their own interviews where they showcase their experience and their expertise. And definitely there's some insights if you are starting a food business, which hopefully you are if you're on this call. These audio recordings will definitely have some great business planning and strategic planning tidbits. So stay tuned. We are going to release all of that before the end of the year here, just in time for the holidays. So congratulations again to the women who are breaking barriers in the food and beverage sector in Canada. We totally recognize it's not easy and we admire anyone who's doing it. So yeah, and check all these names. The business websites are on our website, so beawesome.ca on the homepage. You'll be able to view all their websites, so definitely check out their products. And my second announcement is about the Accelerator. So Awesome has 2 group learning programs, the Accelerator and our Export Initiative. The Accelerator, we've run 2 sessions of it, so we have had 2 cohorts. The second cohort was presented by FCC, Farm Credit Canada, which was super amazing of them. And the Accelerator is all about domestic expansion. So we put you through 10 weeks of intensive learning, strategic connections, and some pitch opportunities to help you grow your market in the country. The applications are open as of today, so that's super exciting. Our next cohort will start in March, and you can find that information on our website. And so this is for companies who have nutrition labels and ingredients tables, and they are in market. So if you're a startup, if you're a concept business, not probably right for you just yet. But once you get all of your labeling done and you're actually selling, then the Accelerator will be for you. The Export Initiative this is the first time we're running it. So the applications did close, but we are starting the cohort in January. So and thanks to a generous donation or sponsorship from BDC, we were able to offer a few more seats, and also the power of Zoom helps us increase our class size. So if you are still interested, we will still have a conversation with you about the program. And you can either just DM me, like send me a chat on Zoom, or you can email us at awesome@thefoodcenter.sk.ca and I can send you some information. This program is a little bit more niche because you do need to have production capacity and a market and a little bit of cash to actually export. So depending on where you are in your business, you might be a fit. I think that's all I had. Thank you so much for joining us today and having me provide some announcements to you. I definitely encourage you to check out the Awesome Achievement Award recipients on our website, check out the Accelerator pages. You can see the other companies who went through the Accelerator in the past, and you can also view some more information about the Export Initiative. I'm going to welcome Bailey back to the screen, put my mask on, and she's going to lead us through our next session. Thanks again. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Okay, thank you, Shanuka, and congrats to all of the Achievement Award winners. Okay, I'm just going to take a minute here to get organized. I'm going to bring in our next panelists. Do a little bit of a shuffle here from our last panel. Okay. Okay, I think that should work. So, moving on to session number 2, the Fireside Chat. This is going to be more of an informal but informative discussion with 3 women with different roles in the food and beverage industry in the prairies. So thank you all for joining me this morning. We've got Dahlia, Shannon, and Shonda. Shonda, if you want to just share your video when you get a chance. But before we launch into our discussion, I just want to point out that a lot of our discussion today is around product development and logistics and regulatory, which is all obviously very important. But when Shanuka and I were discussing everything on the agenda, we realized that there's a little bit of an elephant in the room that we didn't touch on in terms of the financial side of the business. So since this is kind of my area of expertise, I'm just going to take a quick minute to highlight a few things. I'll be referring to my notes so that I get this out efficiently. And I'm just going to share my screen for a minute. All right. Okay. So in most cases, people start a food business because they're really passionate about cooking or a particular recipe or product that has a special meaning to them. And sometimes the numbers or the financial statements, margins aren't necessarily their strong suit. And many people even despise this side of the business. But I want to beg you to spend some time to get familiar with your numbers. If you don't have a business partner or someone you trust that's strong in this area, I recommend getting a really good bookkeeper. So at minimum, your records are organized, and then you'll be able to have a good discussion with them on the financial health of your business. We have such a full agenda today. I don't have as much time to go into depth as would be needed, but I want to just share a couple valuable financial terms for when you're starting out your business, things to understand. And we'll put these in the resource guide as well and provide some more links to more financial information and also some funding opportunities as well. So just to rattle off a few basic starter definitions. in terms of your costs of your business, there are two major categories. There's variable and fixed costs. So variable costs are like also called direct costs or costs of goods sold. And that's a cost that changes in proportion to how much product you make. So these are things like ingredients, packaging, labels, or if you know exactly how much labor can be allocated to the production of your product, that can be in that category as well. Then there's fixed costs, and sometimes you may hear this referred to overhead. So these are costs that are there regardless of how much you produce. So these are things like insurance, rent, utilities, business license. And then your gross margin is how much you have after your sales left after your variable costs. So your sales minus your variable costs. This number is how much money you have to put towards your fixed costs, which are all those overhead items. And then you want to know how much you need in order to cover all of your costs, including your fixed costs. And this is called your break-even point. So for your to figure out how many units you need to sell, it's break-even units are your fixed costs divided by your gross margin. So that'll tell you, I need to sell 100 jars of pickles this month to be able to cover all my costs. And then anything after that is profit. That's the money that you have to take home. But some people at this point still haven't factored in their own labor. And you need to take time to figure that out. So it might be hard off the start to judge. But once you get your systems down, you should be able to track how much you're spending. I find that in general, women tend to undervalue their time. And when we're very passionate about something, it can be like, oh, well, I really enjoy doing this, or I don't mind this part of the job, so I don't need to charge for that. And that's your choice. But if you choose to not take this into consideration, and you don't value all that time that's going in, you may be better off keeping this as a hobby or making it for friends and family, because running a business will consume your life, as some of these ladies will allude to, I'm sure. And if you're hoping to make this your career, you need to pay your bills. In any business, labor is the biggest expense. And so at a minimum, you should be figuring out how to pay yourself a minimum wage. So keep good track of your costs, both in money and time, because knowledge is power. And if you know the trouble spots that are causing, higher costs, you can work on those and find efficiencies. Also, if you're ever going to take out financing, your bank or your lender is going to want to know these numbers. So you're going to have to know them, and same with a retailer. So probably we will talk about this a little bit coming up in this session, but a retailer is going to need to take a cut or want a wholesale price from you. So you need to figure out how that factors into your calculations. So, okay, enough from me. Like I said, I'll be sending out some materials after the conference. And if you'd like to book a one-on-one on this particular topic, I'm happy to do so. And any other one-on-ones Chinook and I can handle. So make sure you keep that in mind for questions that pop up. So, okay, moving on to the rest of the panel. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and we'll see everybody's face. All right, welcome ladies. We have joining us today, Dahlia Cohen of Wild Folk, Botanical Beverages out of Calgary, Alberta. We've got Shonda Blacklock, co-owner of Benlock Farms and the Little Market Box in Saskatoon, and Shannon Hood Neefer, Vice President of the Saskatchewan Food Centre, right upstairs. Welcome everyone, nice to see you. So for this session, we're going to have all of our faces on the screen at the same time, and I'm going to alternate asking questions to each of you, and then we can have some back and forth discussion when it feels right. So Dahlia, I'm going to start with you. Tell us a little bit about your product, how you came up with your idea, and what was your journey to bring it to life?
Okay, so I have Wild Folk Botanical Beverages. They're free-spirited cocktails that are based on the classics. And all good ideas come from a night out with friends, I believe. At least my two ideas have. And so I was actually out in Toronto, out for drinks, and we weren't ready to finish the evening. We ended up at a bar called Pretty Ugly in Toronto, and they have half of a liquor list and half of their list are non-alcoholic beverages. And an idea sparked that I could take a similar idea and bring it back to my restaurant and help increase sales. I owned a vegetarian restaurant and people would come in for health and wellness. They often didn't think of alcohol as part of our menu. So even though we had an extensive list, our sales were quite low in that category. I brought that idea back and started playing with different recipes and created my own small list of these beverages, and really noticed not only sales increase, but people's body language as well when they noticed that there was a menu that they could order off of. There are numerous reasons why people choose not to drink. So whether they're pregnant or for religious reasons, numerous reasons. And I worked in a combination of the kitchen and on the floor. And so often I would kind of take note of people's body language and interactions for business meetings, or who would order a drink and just hold on to it and have that kind of awkward moment. So yeah, I started playing with recipes there, and with great response. They were on our menu for 4 years, and then I sold the business. When I sold the restaurant, I took those recipes with me, and I didn't know why. Partly, I think nobody else had made the recipes. They were a mix of 26 herbs, botanicals, roots, rinds, and yeah, no one else had made them. So I just kind of brought them with me, took a half a year off to decompress, and was thinking I would get out of food and beverage, but somehow, when it's in you, and you have a passion for it. And I, during COVID, was continuing to watch different, read different articles and read up in magazines on food and beverage, and kind of noticed the trend going towards non-alcoholic cocktails, beers, wines. And that was another aha moment of realizing that I needed to can these beverages. So yeah, I took the long journey to get these into a can, and it was very different from creating a 1 liter syrup to scaling up, and quite a few different lessons, which were really interesting. Really, I don't know. I think I get a little bit of excitement with not knowing what to do or what direction to turn. And I would just speak to different people in the industry, different friends, different family members, anybody that had CPG products, packaged products or beverages, beer, and just kind of asking a million questions, hitting up everybody that I knew to figure out where to start. And in part of that process, I found Awesome, which was amazing. They accepted me into the cohort, and it's been great. I've connected with a lot of people through that. And I think just through all the questions and not being shy or embarrassed to ask the stupid ones, I started the beverage.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's a canned product. So how did you go about finding a facility or the equipment to do that?
So I think that was through some of the connections that I had made with the restaurant, some of the products that we sold there, some of the beers, kombuchas. I'm actually co-packing out of a kombucha facility, and they've been incredibly helpful with kind of the science side of things. And they've connected me to a group of other people who have had a ton of different experiences with like successes and failures. And so I think that's also kind of helped, is asking where people have gone wrong and where to start. They also connected me to, or a few people had directed me to the Leduc facility, and they were really helpful with taking the product to a different level, testing the bricks, figuring out what pH I needed to be at, even down to how I would need a nitro doser if I wasn't going to carbonate and put something in a can. So it was really like ground up, not knowing anything, but being really determined and, passionate about getting these products out.
Yeah, I think that's key, like the kind of tenacity to keep after it. And then also, like you said, not being scared to ask questions and reach out to other people. Most people are very like willing to help each other out. It's such a complicated type of business to start. So it can definitely feel very overwhelming. And I love the fact that people are willing to collaborate, and that's
yeah,
great.
I was actually surprised. It gave me a lot of energy speaking to other people, because people were I was shocked at how willing people were to help and how passionate and enthusiastic they were, kind of revisiting when they started and offering information. I feel like it's created a community, and I really have not gotten denied from anyone, which has been amazing. So partly using the connections I have, but partly contacting random strangers that were completely willing to give me a few minutes. So and just kind of remembering the why all the time. So with the restaurant I always had business partners. And so there was always somebody to bounce ideas off of, and, to keep positive. And in the moments of questioning and wondering and not knowing which direction to turn, I just think I always had the why written down everywhere to remember why I was doing what I was doing.
That's great. Good point. Okay, Shonda. Good morning. We're going to move on to you. So just unmute yourself. And so you wear a number of hats, from beef producer to product. You sell your beef as a product, and you were doing that at the traditional farmers market in Saskatoon for a number of years. And now you own your own store, the Little Market Box. Can you compare selling at a traditional farmers market versus selling at a store? And your store, I believe, is somewhat different than like a co-op or whatever, because you are considered a farmers market, but you have like a full-time location with store hours, and vendors don't necessarily need to be at your store handing out their own products. You're kind of taking care of that for them, right? So yeah, if you just want to kind of compare those two types of like what the benefits from your perspective are from each.
Yes, I can do that. I am married, and my husband and I own Benlock Farms. He's been doing that his whole life, and then we've been members of the Saskatoon Farmers Market for 17 years. And then when the Saskatoon market was going through an event where they were changing locations, that's when one of my favorite people in the whole world, who is my business partner, who owns Those Girls at the Market, the raw chocolate in Saskatoon. We put our heads together for about a few minutes one Sunday and said, hey, why don't we set up our own store? And that's how that kind of happened. There were so many people that were a little panicked as to how were they going to sell their product. They didn't have the means to do it. And Juliana and I just kind of came up with our own concept. And so our business falls under the farmers market, which is pretty cool for people that are new, want to try out a product. They're not, they don't have to get, married to a particular label. They can develop their label, their packaging, things like that. When Juliana and I wrote our list of how many vendors we thought we could represent, our goal, we had this dream list, and it was 30 different vendors. And we did that within probably the first couple months. And then I think we're at about 108 different producers we sell for now. They're all consignment. That's a pretty cool thing I like about it. So the vendor doesn't have to be in our store. We are online and we deliver across the city twice a week on Wednesdays and Saturdays. And then what's nice about them is they've got the ownership of their business, so they're still involved with their marketing and their social media. But get it to tell our staff their story, and then we have lots of fun with it, representing, you know, the producers as they want to be represented. And yeah, we just signed a location for a new spot coming up in the spring. So I know we're pretty excited about that. So we'll be able to support more people and, you know, just allow them to grow their businesses. And it's just kind of a nice little stepping stone.
Yeah, for sure. Congrats on the new space.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. What do you think, like, from your time spent at the Saskatoon Farmers Market, and for people that are maybe thinking about joining a farmers market in their city, what were some of the like benefits that you saw, other than obviously like selling your product, but just, is it good for networking? Like what kinds of pros and cons could you tell people about?
I think that they probably could be good for networking. Like there's definitely a lot of people there, but there's a lot of politics that go along with that. You know, like the Saskatoon Farmers Market is run by a board. And so with every board, there's policies and procedures and all kinds of things that people have to work through to get there. And they're open a little bit limited hours. So you have to sell the product for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So those are some of the really great things. We did it because we did not have any other opportunity to do so. And we didn't have an opportunity. We could have maybe, as just a beef farm, go on our own and have like a beef store, but what fun is really a beef store, I guess.
Yeah, having the different products creates a bigger draw and kind of helps people learn about many different products that are available. So yeah, I like that idea a lot. And like you said, the time to stand there at the farmers market, give up your Saturdays and Sundays all the time. I mean, I think it's a great investment to make maybe off the beginning, but then you got to think about how much time you're spending there, and maybe the goal is to move your product into a store, but it could be a chance for good customer feedback, I suppose.
Yeah, some people, I find their talent is in the kitchen, not necessarily on selling it, because they, it can be quite crowded and stuff like that at the farmers market.
Yeah, for sure. Excellent. Okay, thanks, Shonda. Shannon, hi. Nice to have you with us. I'm wondering if you could expand on a little bit of what Shonda said. And we talked earlier about the requirements for a farmer's market not being necessarily the same as retail. So if someone has got their start at a farmer's market, what kinds of things do they need to have figured out or have in mind to go into more of a traditional retail situation? Oh, hold on, Shannon, I'm having trouble hearing you.
I muted myself.
There we go.
I double muted myself because I was afraid. So that's a very good question, Bailey. And when I was brainstorming the list of things that I could talk about, it's lengthy. But one of the things, and I don't want to overwhelm people, and luckily a number of these points have been touched on already this morning. Mm-hmm. So that's awesome. So I'm not going to be the first one to bring it up. So the biggest one, and I think Aaron or Sarah had maybe mentioned it earlier, is know the requirements on food safety. And this is something that, when I think of business planning and strategy for a startup organization, I do like to think out, you know, what are your 5 and 10-year goals, and then be able to map that back so that you start building your food safety plan at the early stages. So that if you do happen to need to invest in equipment or facility, or, you know, partner with organizations like the different food centers or community kitchens, that you're partnering with the right ones so that you can get into retail stores. In most retail stores, and I think it was Aaron that maybe had mentioned that you should reach out to the retail, each particular one, but I would say most of them are going to require a third party level food safety requirement, which would be most of the food processors, most of the food centers, and any food processor selling into a retailer. So any of your co-mans should have a third party audit. And if you have any questions about that, talk to Aaron.
Okay.
So full disclosure, not a food safety expert. I'm not an expert in much of this, actually. So I'm also not an expert in labels, so I can't tell. So if you need help with labels, you need to talk to Sarah, but you need a proper legal label that's bilingual with a proper nutrition fact panel. And Sarah went actually into some good detail on nutrition fact panels. I think it was Sarah and Aaron and Brev all talked about shelf life. And so that's also really important, knowing your shelf life, but then also tying that back. So depending on the sector you're in, or the section of the grocery store you're in, or the retail sector, every single section will have minimums on shelf life. And so if you're a refrigerated or frozen product and you're looking to get into retail, you need 45 days. And if you don't have 45 days, they're probably not going to look at you.
Okay.
And so that's where, you know, tying into some food science people is a good idea to get that, one, measured, and then B, maybe some product processes and procedures or ingredients to help you get that shelf life up, which is why I liked what Dahlia said, that she had reached out to the Leduc Food Center and they helped with pH and bricks and things like that. Super smart. So happy you did that, because then you know that you've got that you've kind of checked off a lot of those boxes to make sure that your product has the shelf life and is food safe in the package that you have it in. So it's fantastic. Well done. When you'd asked the question, you'd said something about proven sales. It was one of your triggers for me. And when I was thinking about the proven sales part, that's actually more for you, not for the retailer. Like, that's how you leverage your price point. That's how you leverage your value. It's not necessarily, it's how you sell yourself. And so, yes, it's really good information to have. And the more, obviously, the more sales you have, the better it is. But the more you know about your product and the sales and the cost of goods, and go back to your top point earlier, Bailey, those costs of goods, and knowing your cost structures will help you in those conversations, because then you know what you can give up and you know what you can't, because it is a negotiation.
Mm-hmm.
Those retailers, they have their requirements, but you can also go in and negotiate your price point, your size, package size. You can negotiate a lot of different things to help them. Also, my recommendation is go to the store, and before you put it in a package, go to the store and make sure that your package will fit on the shelf for the section that you work in. And so this is actually something that's missed a fair bit, where you design your package and you're ready and you go to the retailer and you pitch it, and then they go, it's a ½ inch too tall. And now you got to go back and redesign. And so make sure you go to as many stores as you possibly can and measure it out. And, you know, if you can have conversations with retailers, and I know Shanuka and Bailey have connections with retailers too. So if you need those contacts, or myself or Sarah, Ricky and Brev, we can all help you link up with some of those retailers so that you can start having those conversations. And having a manufacturing plan. Can you scale up or scale back depending on sales? That's my probably too long view of your question. Sorry.
Yeah, that was great. That's such a practical tip, and something that I never even thought of, was the measurement of your product could have a drastic effect on whether they can fit you in or not.
I can't even tell you how many times I've had a client have to redesign their package because it was too tall, too wide, too something.
Really?
Yeah, no, which is why I mentioned it, because I think it's happened to a client of mine at least a half a dozen times in the last, I don't know, 2 years.
Great,
So,
great information to have. One more, just follow up on that, Shannon. How does someone identify the right person to talk to at the store? Do they just walk into the store with their product, or like, do you, I'm just shaking your head, no?
Yeah, you'll get, because the most places other than going to the little market box, and full disclosure, you have to go to their website. It's fantastic. So the Know Your Producers page is spot on. The pictures are awesome, and if you scroll down, there's this dude with a picture of a goat in the background, and I literally laughed out loud. And so go to the website. Because it depends on what you want to do, and so if you want pay with, or so I'm going to start from the beginning. If you want to sell your product in your package with your label and your branding, then you need to talk to the manager for that region, your geographical region of that sector. And so it's going to take a bit of knocking on doors. It's going to take a bit of cold calling. It's going to take a bit of, I know that guy, and that guy's got to connect me to that guy, and that guy's going to connect me to this girl. And it's a little bit of that, but you know, most of the food centers have kind of been plugged in and trying to build those relationships with retailers, and it's really nice right now because retailers are looking for local products, and they're looking for, you know, the new and up and coming thing. They realize that they can't have, you know, one company with 50 different products. That consumers are looking for more diverse branding.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good. So they're plugged in. And then the other question to ask yourself is, are you also okay with private label? And so are you okay with putting your product in the store's label? And so that's another question, because those are two different department managers. And so the private label people are a little bit more easy to get in touch with. And so it depends on what you want to do. And my in is usually through the private label person and then over. So if you don't want private label, I usually go through the private label person and then say, okay, well, how do I talk to the person that doesn't do that? And so
Smart. Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I talk too much.
No, that's great. I love it. Dahlia, just kind of touching on that, what are your current streams of selling? Like, are you in retail or are you in restaurants, and how did you kind of approach those people?
Yeah, I have a mix of retail, restaurants, markets, liquor stores. I wrote the list of where I envision the product and then how many I would like to have in each place each month, and I'm working through that. So I'm actually only in my first month of selling, and I think having those goals, I've ended up being able to kind of exceed them and push to, you know, to check the boxes. And maybe I have a fewer restaurants, but then, you know, a couple breweries that have agreed to sell the product. And I started off with all of the connections through the restaurant. I think that was an easier way to practice my pitch and be a little bit more relaxed. Places that have aligned values, again, it's easier to speak to those people and sell your product when you know that it would be a great fit in that particular place. So that's kind of where I've started. Restaurants and liquor stores are the two places that I'm really pushing for, because I know that they can move through a higher volume.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, I don't want to approach too many of them at the beginning, because I want to make sure that I can keep up with the demand. So right now I'm getting low on product, and I thought, oh, no problem. I'll just be able to do another run and then cue the floods and everything else. And I'm supposed to do a run next week, and product isn't arriving. So I think I'm moving at a slow pace, just to really focus on those first few locations and make sure that they're set up, and that I have, you know, the right print material. I have those little shelf talkers, you know, that I'm able to focus not on running around and delivering product or finding new clients, but making sure that I'm focused on the few that I have and doing it well, and then having the confidence to move up.
Yeah, I think that's really smart. And oh man, sounds like you're all like already experiencing all those supply chain challenges, and you just never know what's going to affect it. Hey.
No, and people mentioned it over and over, and I was like, okay, empty shelves because of COVID, but then the weather, and you know, there are always surprises. So it's a tough balance, I think, between, you know, not necessarily having that startup capital to keeping enough product for, you know, the next run as well. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Such a like fine line to walk for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see here. Shonda, if you could just talk a little bit about what your particular store requirements are, and like, are there like criteria that you need? And if say something's not selling, do you say, okay, we gotta let up the shelf space for someone else? Or, you know, just talk maybe a little bit about that from the retailer's perspective.
Yeah, we have kind of the two different categories. We have the food side of things, and then we have our artistic people. And they're just two different sides because you obviously don't need the same thing. We focus primarily on the food. The food, they have a contract that they have to fill out that makes sure that they're following what's required of us through health and safety. You know, being it's in their kitchen, they have to show us their kitchen, they have to show us their food handling. We require insurance, a certain level of insurance. There's like, we have a document that we had done up with our lawyers, just that everybody's compliant, everybody gets a file. We have a lot of that because we've got a lot of different personalities. And so we try to work with the producer to help them maybe establish themselves, get themselves going. Like we're not a traditional retail where you bring us a box, and because you don't get paid for that because we're consignment. So that's where it's different, and there's some ownership on that producer where they get to play with their prices. They can look at what their bottom dollar is. I always tell people it's easier to go down in price than it is to go up. And we work with them on an individual basis based on that. The labeling, they have to have the ingredients. They don't have to have the nutritional labels because we fall under the Farmers Market Act, but we do make them have the ingredients. And then I try to work with we're different in the sense of, if you go to any grocery store, usually the price is not on the package, if you've ever noticed that. So we're trying to work with our producers to pretty label their pricing with things, because we have so much stuff and we're constantly moving it, because our store is only like 900 square feet. So we follow the rules that are given to us, and then we enforce the rules, and we try to give mentorship to, you know, hey, this girl, she bought her jars from here. Hook them up with the right pair.
Nice. And what happens, like, say if you had 10 people come to you with like a jam product, do you accept all of them, or how do you decide which ones to sell?
No, we don't accept everybody because we're not a grocery store.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I want to love the product in our store as much as the producer does.
Yeah.
And so we try not to have overlap of several different things unless there's a need for the overlap. Like, for instance, I'm a beef producer. I'm never going to have another beef producer in the store because, but the beef producer is meeting all of our everything that we need.
Mm-hmm.
You know, all the milk everybody loves. You know what? He's able to supply all the milk and the cheese and the yogurt. So we don't have another need for another goat producer.
Mm-hmm.
And so we look at it that way. But when they have something that's different and unique that we can bring in, then we onboard them. right now we're tight for space, but in the spring we'll have twice the space to be able to onboard more things.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, Shannon, what do you see successful food businesses doing in terms of strategy or market research and business planning? What's a good place to start, or some, best practices for people from that angle?
You gave me the hardest questions.
They're so broad.
Just
Any nuggets will be just great.
Because you could talk for days on strategy and market research and business planning. This was really hard, but actually Dahlia and Shonda I'm going to use them as examples, because most of my points actually link to a number of things that they talked about. So for me, for strategy, the biggest one is follow trends. So Dahlia, with the non-alcoholic beverages, it's a health and wellness trend. Obviously, you knew that, you hit on that. But then there was this new policy that came out of, my tip is on strategy: watch the news and watch the trends. So that's tip number one, because policy change, the legalization of cannabis actually played a significant role in not necessarily the reduction of consumption of alcohol, but an increased interest in non-alcoholic beverages. Because most people, and I didn't know this, but apparently people who partake in cannabis don't like to necessarily also partake in alcoholic beverages, but they want to go to the bar and they want to drink something that looks and feels like alcohol, but they don't want to puke on the sidewalk. And so that's the thing. So you've hit on something, right? And so then how do you capitalize on that? So what's the next step? And so always be thinking, okay, what's the trend? What's coming up in policy changes? How do I leverage that? How do I make that opportunity? And then for Shonda, there was a change in the market. It looked like it could be a bad obstacle. It could be something, and then you came up with something that positioned you in a better spot. And so you took this hurdle, this obstacle, and you made it an opportunity. Which always be looking for, okay, what's the gap? What's the obstacle? How can I fix that? And how can I plug that hole? And the other piece is on the strategy side. I love your business model. You have taken innovative business modeling and just blown it out the door in terms of how you're structured the little market box, and that it's consignment, and you've taken all these little pieces and you went, well, I'm going to take that from that sector and that from that sector, and I'm going to plug it into this sector. And so tip number 2 is be open-minded and don't be afraid to shake it up. The strategy part of me always says, don't forget, always do your internal and external analysis. Be honest in your internal analysis. Don't fall into, drawing a blank. Don't fall into confirmation bias. Sorry, I knew it started with a C. You're passionate about your product, but don't forget to take a step back. Is this product just for me? Because I've got tons of great ideas. I have this gap. I gotta make this. No, it turns out it's actually I'm the only one that needs that product. And so you got to make sure that there's a market need for it. I'll stop there.
Right.
I've got way more, but I'll stop there.
Okay. Thank you. Yes. So I think we are at 11:30. We've got a few minutes for a question and answer from the group. So if any of the participants want to ask any of these ladies a question, make sure to pop it in the Q&A. Also, Shanuka, I know you're eavesdropping over there. So if you have any follow-up questions that you'd like to get out of the panel, feel free to chime in. Otherwise, until anyone else has a question, I'm just going to hog the mic.
Bailey, I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
If the panelists wouldn't mind sharing some resources that's been helpful for them in terms of moving the needle forward. It could be, maybe some lenders or just maybe some mentor experiences that they had, or what did they do to stay motivated, like keep informed? What resources in the community did they leverage?
Okay, great. Whoever wants to go first can go. Go ahead, Dahlia.
Awesome was a great, great help. It came at a great time. They've connected me with some mentors who have given me a ton of their time, and that's been amazing. Also, Business Link and BDC and Google, because I just keep typing in, Calgary small business or Alberta small business, Canadian small business, help on CPG products, and just kind of picking little podcasts here and there. What's her name? There's Food Biz Wiz has been great for me as well. She has different podcasts. Allison Ball. Those are kind of my main go-tos that come to me right now.
I love when I can find a good podcast. It's like you get to learn while you drive, and it's just, I don't know.
Yeah.
I sometimes don't know if it's just me, obviously not, because there's so many podcasts, but yeah, as a business owner, you're so busy that sometimes it's hard to like tune into traditional training or reading. And so a podcast is amazing if you can find a good one. Yeah. Shonda, any resources that you guys have found really helpful?
Resources for us, I think I really liked what Shannon said, is watching, and you watch and you watch and you watch, and you can find where that little gap is, or talking to social media. I'm not a social media whiz by any means, but it's crazy what you can find on there. Like, we were just part of that RBC thing last night, and hearing their stories were just amazing. So it's like watching those things. But then I like what Shannon said too, finding out if that's the product for everyone or just for you, and stepping back from it, because like we get overwhelmed with people coming in and they're so excited and they're ready and they're gonna make 1 million jars, and it's like, whoa, what is even that? And and looking at what the trend is and where your trend will fit. Like if you're in health and wellness, or if you're in quick and grab, quick food versus, what is your following? You have your vegans and you have your meat and you have your, where do you fit in, and following that right panel. Like, don't follow a vegan if you're trying to sell beef.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Oh, and by the way, that little RBC thing was like a national award that Shonda and her partner won and was presented last night. So congratulations.
Thank you. It was very, very cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Congratulations.
But
my tip, sorry, while you maybe sort out the Q&A section there, my tip actually is to have a trusted set of advisors. And so, which I think when I've talked to the more successful entrepreneurs, don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to find a group of people that are passionate about what you're doing, and that you can lean on in terms of asking the dumb questions, but asking the smart questions, asking all the questions, and they can help guide you. You don't necessarily need to take their advice. The thing is that you take the advice of all of your advisors and then you formulate it into what you feel like is the right next steps. And so it's really important.
Yeah. Yeah. Good one. I like to find people that are like older and like further along in their careers, or just have like different sets of expertise. And yeah, at first, when I started my business, I was always so hesitant to reach out and ask questions because I didn't want to bother anyone. But a lot of times people are just so interested or excited at what you're doing, and they want to help. So
I do find that the advisee, if that's a proper term, that relationship goes both ways. Usually the advisor also gets something out of it too. And so it's usually never a bother.
Yeah.
I think the other hurdle is that you feel like you don't want people to know what you're doing and you want to keep everything behind closed doors. But things happen so quickly now that it's almost impossible to stay in front of what's happening with the next trend, what's happening with the next demographic that's going to be buying your product. And there's just so much out there. You don't know what you don't know. And so you just lean on everybody that you possibly can, that you trust, that you think is smart. Don't lean on the people that you think make bad decisions.
Yeah, exactly. Right on. Okay, we do have a couple questions in the chat. So Kate says, what are some of the basic insurance requirements for startup businesses selling packaged products? Dahlia, do you have any advice on what kinds of stuff you had to have for insurance?
So mine's a little bit different. Well, I'm working with a co-packer, and so they have their insurance, and then I had to get my own insurance. And that's basically once the product leaves that facility. So if anything happens, well, it's I've got the co-packer, and then I also have a storage facility, and then I have my own insurance. So there's 3 insurances on my product, and that's mine just goes for once it gets to a store shelf, and then I guess they also have their own insurance. So there's a little bit of overlap, and it's a little bit confusing, but mine's basically on if my product harms anyone. And I have, I guess, the start of the safety plan for going to some of the larger stores to meet their requirements. But that's something that I'll kind of need to add on as I get to larger stores. And I'm not sure about the insurance. I might need to step it up another level once I get there. But for most of the stores that I'm in, they haven't even asked me for insurance, which I thought that's a little interesting, but I have it.
This is the least sexy area of being a food entrepreneur, but it's super important. You need to be able to cover a recall. You need to be able to cover if you make someone sick. So you do need some liability insurance, and it's important to have your own, in addition to the stores having theirs, in addition to the distributors having theirs. It's important to have your own, because what's going to happen is going to be an insurance war if something does happen. Okay, well, you did it. No, I did it. No, you did it. No, you did it. And so you need to be able to have enough to cover that you did it. No, you did it part. And so super unsexy. Talk to an insurance broker that's familiar with the area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For sure. Sean,
I'll on that too, that is like, you cannot even look at me at all if you don't have the insurance that we require, because like we have our insurance, but because we're representing, like that is one of the foremost things in our store is insurance, because but I won't even remotely talk to somebody if they don't have, like, it's funny that you're not asked that, Dahlia, because that's one of the first things I ask people is, check into your policy, and we won't even deal with you if you don't have what we require.
Yeah.
Again, it may just be because I've hit up people that I know already, and they assume they know that I'm
the trust is high.
Yeah. Sure, you on the shelf. Good. I've I don't know. The connections have been amazing.
Yeah. And just from the businesses that I've had using the kitchen facility that I own, we also require them to have insurance to cover any damages, obviously, to the facility. And then also if there were any food or health claims, whatever. And it's honestly not that expensive for a single product. I think it usually works out to be about $60 a month. Mm-hmm. So it's not a giant cost. And obviously if you were selling more places or had your own facility, it would be more, but it's worth it, I think.
No, absolutely. Marguerite makes a good point in the chat, whereas most companies need 2 to 5 million in liability, and that's where the food center is depending on your geographical selling region. So, and if you're selling to the US, up the liability. So Canada's a bit more of a easier market. You don't need as much liability.
Holders out there that you can get it from as well. So it's very, very easy to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, we have one more question. What are important first steps or considerations to make when wanting to move from hobby to a business? There's a lot, I think. Yeah, basically like work through a business plan, I think would be my advice, and that will kind of get you asking all of those questions. And it will have the get you to run through all those financial things that I had been talking about. If anyone has anything else they'd like to add of lessons learned or things moving from hobby to business.
Your farmer's market is a good start for that, where you can test it, you can sample it, you can represent it. So that's a really good start for a product.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah. Not only listening to your friends, everyone's going to tell you, and family, they're going to all say it's a great idea, kind of smile and nod. There are a lot of great business plan templates out there as well, which I found really helpful on the BDC site and Business Link, and just jotting down kind of questions in each category to run through.
Yeah, and anyone that I'm thinking, it was been my experience, anytime you're applying for any sort of financing, they're going to want a business plan as well. So a lot of people need financing to take something from a hobby into a business. And a lot of times those people will work with you, you know, they'll send you questions back on your business plan. Have you thought of this? Have you considered what happens if this happens? And yeah, so and Shanuka says research and plan for moving hobbies to business. Yeah, lots of research, whether it's consumer research, business research. Yeah, spend the time to really get into the nitty-gritty of it. So okay. I have one last question kind of for Dahlia, because I feel like, you know, COVID has changed some things for restaurants, and we're hearing about a number of chefs that are looking for to move into a food product rather than relying solely on their restaurant. So Dahlia, do you want to just touch on like what the difference in experience has been in terms of running a restaurant business versus a food or beverage product business?
Yeah, that's a challenging question because, you know, I had 15 years in the restaurant, and then I'm only, you know, a month in on the product. And so for the restaurant, I think that the challenging parts was staffing. And I really love right now that I rely mostly on myself, and everybody else that I work with have been, you know, subcontractors, and that's been amazing. Also working out of a co-packing facility and not needing to have all of that equipment that breaks down. So there are a lot of costs, upfront costs that have come with creating the beverage, excuse me, but there are a lot of savings on the other side. I'm just trying to think of some of the differences. I mean, standardization is challenging with recipes in the restaurant. It's so easy when an ingredient changes to, you know, either pull that menu item off or to tweak it slightly, and people will be okay with those changes. One thing that's been interesting with the beverages is making sure that I'm getting my product from places that have policies in place, like they don't change the products. Right? Like you create a label and say, my oranges are organic. It's printed on the label. You have to get organic oranges, and they have to taste the same as how they did last time. Yeah. I think that was a big eye opener of, oh yeah, it was something that I didn't really consider. How am I going to ensure that the product tastes the same every time? Yeah. And that I didn't, you know, taking the money and saying, do I print 2,000 labels, or do I print 5,000? Well, 5,000 is more cost effective, but there may be changes each time. So only printing 1,000 labels to make sure that I can don't have wasted labels. So there are
Yeah.
a lot of, I thought it was going to be easier than it was to just jump into the packaged product. And I had the first couple rounds, the coloring changed on my beverage over time. My cans blew up. It's more science and math than I realized, more science and math than, just measuring a teaspoon of this, a tablespoon of that, even getting my head into, it's not teaspoons and tablespoons anymore, it's weights. It's been a year and a bit process of changing everything. So you can have that recipe, but it's not just transferring it over, putting it in a bottle and you're good.
For sure.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks for sharing those few lessons learned off the hop there. We are at 11:45, so we're at the end of our session. Thank you so much to all of you for sharing your insight and expertise. I feel like I could go on and talk to you all for hours, but hopefully we can connect again soon. And thank you so much. We are going to move on. And also there's been a lot of resources shared in the chat. So everyone watch the chat and we will try and consolidate these as well and send them out. So have a great day, ladies. I'm going to just adjust the panelist screen again. So you are dismissed. Okay. All right. Just got to get organized here. I'm going to bring in Carly. Okay. Hi, Carly. Okay.
Is that better?
Yes, I am very excited for our keynote speaker, Carly Manish-Wittick. Am I pronouncing it right?
Whitting, but you're close. That's good. I'm gonna have a lifetime of it being mispronounced, so it's all good. It's all good.
Okay. Carly is the owner and founder of Smack Dab Foods. She's a Red Seal chef by training and has developed a delicious line of gourmet mustards. This has grown to a business level and she is selling at 300 stores in Canada. Is that right? Wow.
Yeah, over 300. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is my first time meeting Carly, but she's been active in the awesome community from the beginning. So thank you so much, Carly, for joining us. And I'm going to pass the floor over to you for your presentation.
Sure. How do I get my screen shared here?
There should be kind of along the bottom with all the chats, polls, everything. There should be a button that says share screen.
Gotcha.
You see that?
Perfect. Yeah. Let me just get going here. Okay. Let me just get rolling here. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for having me. This topic about starting a food business is something I am so incredibly passionate about. And there was some amazing conversations before I took in the retail one with all those ladies, and some amazing things were talked about. Insurance, these are things actually that I wasn't able to touch on in my keynote, so I'm so glad they brought them up. Insurance, guys, really important. There's also, you can get recall insurance now, which is also, I highly recommend if you have a broker that can offer it. Recall insurance, and from when Dahlia was saying that her ingredients are stuck in Vancouver, we are really at mercy of the environment right now, because we are very we're very much related to agriculture. So we're in very interesting times in the food industry right now. And so it is interesting to see this year, we've seen cost of goods go up and we're going to see them going up. So starting a food business right now is very interesting. And I think that anyone getting into this industry, is going to see it evolve over the years like I've seen it. So yeah, just thank you so much for having me today, and congrats to everyone for just showing up to this today. I know we have a lot going on. We're getting into the holiday season, but showing up for things like this is really important. Your business development, your learning is so crucial in this journey to starting your business. It is ongoing, it never ends, and you'll meet new people. So thanks for showing up, and thanks for being here. And today I have half an hour to really dive into the food business and how to start it. And we're going to talk about a roadmap. And this is interesting because I was in your shoes 7 years ago. So I started smack dab 7 years ago. I was fresh out of culinary school. I was working at fine dining restaurants in Winnipeg, and I was seeing how mustard was used in such a versatile way in cooking. And I was really inspired by this ingredient. And what I started to do is do some really in-depth research on mustard. And so I learned it's been a condiment that's been around for thousands of years, literally. It's incredibly rooted in the Canadian prairies. A lot of farmers farm mustard seed in Saskatchewan, Alberta. And I was doing some research on the shelf, and I was noticing that there really weren't many or any local artisan made mustards. And I thought, this is a big gap in the food industry. And also, do people know how much flavor can be added to their food with mustard? So I started this little mustard company in my kitchen. While I was working in the restaurants, I was just kind of making a few batches. I was tweaking them. And little by little, I left the restaurant industry and I dove right in. And I started going to farmers markets and I started selling smack dab. And then now here we are 7 years later. We're sold across Western Canada, over 300 stores now. Sobeys, Safeway, you name it. And we've really grown in the 7 years since we've been starting. But there's definitely been, it's a roller coaster. There's been ups, there's been downs, and there's been lots of learning and things that I'm going to share with you today. So before we talk about the fun stuff, we gotta really, well, first of all, I wanna say the good news for you is that there is so much opportunity in food right now. People are spending more time at home. They're cooking for their families. They're caring more about the food. They're spending, time around the table with loved ones, and they're loving, people are loving to entertain, and they're traveling a little bit less. So we're finding that people are putting more effort into the food they create. So the good news is there's a lot of opportunity in food right now, and especially being local products. Stores like the Sobeys, Safeways, the co-ops, the Save on Foods, they are really locally driven right now, and they are really focused on supporting local companies. However, the bad news, there's a lot of competition right now. There is competition everywhere, and this is tough, but it's important to know this when you start a company, because it's really important to know that you need to cut through all the noise of all the other food companies, and you need to really target your ideal customer right now. Because in a way, when you enter the food industry, you are competing against a lot of companies. You're competing against everyone in essence, because people only have so much time, they only have so much energy, and most importantly, funds to allocate towards food. And unfortunately, food is going to go up in price, and we've seen it, and we've seen that food has increased, and the input costs are going to carry over into the new year due to supply chain. So catching their eye and attracting your ideal customer has never been more crucial than it is now. So you really need to convince people to buy you, and you need to convince them why your product is important for them to put in the fridge, on their shelf. And most importantly, I'm going to say this about 1,000,000 times, you need to earn their trust. And we're going to talk more about this later. And yes, you can do this with like a catchy label and beautiful branding, but that's not a sustainable way to really maintain your customers. You need to maintain your customers by building a like-minded community. And you do that with your brand and your value proposition. And those are two really important things that we're going to talk about shortly as well. Sorry, I'm getting some emails popping up here. So, but first of all, we need to talk about the fundamentals of starting a food manufacturing business. So we first of all you want to create a product that people want to buy. And this is more than just picking a product. There's a lot of strategy behind this we're going to talk about. There's research elements that are really important too. A lot of people have already touched on this. So researching your positioning, your industry, your competition, the plan, dream, analyze, a very important step. Testing 1, 2, 3. You need to test your product and get it out there. And this is really important as well. Brand camp. This is one of my favorite topics. We're going to take you to a little mini brand camp. We're going to talk about you, who you are as a business, and who you want to be to your customers. And lastly, we're going to talk about launching your business. So let's dive right in. So first of all, we're going to talk about the manufacturing side first of all, because obviously your product has to get made. And you can do this 2 different ways. You can do it yourself, meaning you will go out there, you will source a kitchen, you will source a manufacturing facility, kind of like the facilities that we're talking today. Or there's a flip side where you can do the co-packing thing. And Dahlia has talked about that because she does that. We are actually starting to do a little bit of that as well. We do kind of a hybrid of the two. Both are very different, but kind of have the same goal in mind. And they both have different, they are quite different. I'm assuming most people on the call are probably manufacturing themselves. If you are looking at outsourcing, I actually have some really wonderful resources. I understand there's going to be a resource guide that will be sent out after this. I have some really, really great resources that I use to find our perfect co-packer. And they're wonderful resources that I would love to share with you. So after this, if you want to get them, just send me an email, or I also will provide them for the resource package. But there's kind of 2 different avenues. So co-packer is you're more handing it off. You tend to pay maybe a little bit more for your product in the end. However, like Dahlia talked about, you don't have to buy the equipment. Your food safety plan is taken care of by the co-packer. So there is some benefits. There's pros and cons to both. So I think it's just deciding which one is right for you, your lifestyle, what you're looking for, and just what makes more sense, because there's really no right or wrong answer here. Okay, creating a product people want to buy. So this is important, because I think that people just think that they can create a product and say, oh, it tastes great, so people will buy it. That is not the case anymore. We're going into 2022. Competition is fierce on the shelf. You need to really create a product that fits a need for people. So it's important to ask yourself, why am I creating this product? Do I have a personal connection to this product? Is it a family recipe that's been passed down? Why do I want to make this for somebody? And what is my purpose? So what problems can I help a customer solve? What need is not being met? You could also think about, is there a gap in the market? That's what we found, that there was a gap in the market for gourmet mustards that people could use at home and tweak their food. So is there a gap in your mustard in the market? Also, what are pain points of customers that are not being met? Sometimes it's kind of cool to read a forum of feedback from customers and read the negative reviews. What are people missing in their household? What are they missing in their fridge, in their pantry that they're not getting met? Is there a specific dietary need or a specific preference? It's really interesting to find out what's missing out there. And then ultimately, what makes my product different? I threw Drizzle Honey in here for a wonderful example. I know Asia, who owns Drizzle, and I think she's a fabulous entrepreneur. And what she did here was brilliant. So she was in the honey kind of the market. And what she was finding was the honey, as everyone knows, is a very overcrowded market. There's a lot of honeys out there. So she found a way to tweak a honey and make it different. So what she did is she blended her honey with superfood products. So as you can see, she has a berry bliss. She has a turmeric one, which is fabulous. She has a cacao one, and she has a ginger one. So she made basically a superfood honey. And she's pretty much the first person on the market to make a product like this. So she found a way to enter the market, but create a new avenue, which is really, I think, just brilliant. So find a way, if you're thinking of your product and saying, I want to enter a really crowded market, maybe there's a way that you could tweak it slightly just to make it a little bit different and stand out against the rest of the competition. And what I love about what Asia did is she really now has a specific target audience that cares about superfoods and doesn't mind paying a premium for a product like this. But to be honest, that's okay, because I can bet it increased her sales, because now she is really targeting a specific customer that wanted a product such as this. So I love using her as an example, because it's a great example of the importance of making a product and finding a way to stand out in the market. So to talk about products a bit, a lot of this has already been touched on, which is great. So when you think of your packaging, you want to think of what is it going to be in? How is it going to be on the shelf? Shannon mentioned this from the talk before. Make sure it fits on the shelf. Go to some stores, measure, make sure your product isn't going to be too tall. If you're going to be hanging, make sure you have a little hole in the package. Also, look at sustainability. I think that the world of using single-use packaging for products is outdated. We need to look at recyclable, compostable, glass over plastics. I really feel like this is going to set you apart as you go forward in your business, to look at some sustainable packaging. I have a couple resources for that as well. I will definitely share in the chat later, or in this resource, resources everyone will be getting. But I really do feel like this is something to strongly consider. Barcoding. I think that in this, in 2022, I would highly recommend going right to GS1. I think that stores are definitely preferring it now. Lastly, nutritional labeling. If you're going to be at farmers markets, the whole table isn't needed, but definitely a nutritional ingredient list. Also, one thing about packaging, go to a store and understand kind of where your product will be merchandised, and look at how the facing is. Are you going to be flat? Are you going to be facing out? Make sure that your packaging is in a way so you don't have to redo it, like Shannon was saying, that customers will see the front of your packaging. Also, like, think about if it's going to be on the floor, like if you're something that's stacked on a pallet or something, make sure that when people see you from the, like on a bird's eye view, they have your branding. Just look at all different variables of where you'll be merchandised and how customer is literally going to pick up your product, and make sure that you have proper labeling everywhere. Okay, points of differentiation. Talked about that with Drizzle Honey. How are you going to stand out on the market? Diversification. I love this one. So think about different avenues of your product. So can you be what am I trying to say? Can you be ideal for gifting? What about food service? Wedding favors are also a really interesting avenue to pursue as well. It's really interesting to look at those options because you can just diversify your income as you grow. Also, if you want to go into wholesaling, look at that as well, or direct to consumer, building an e-commerce site. But food service is a very interesting avenue to pursue as well, because it's more bulk packaging. So there is some savings in, labor and packaging that way. And lastly, ingredients and supplies. So at this point, you're starting to kind of gather costs in terms of your ingredients. Do you want to supply local? Do you want to import another, area that you need to look at, and also bulk purchasing. So really at this point, with all these 4 points, you should really have a really clear, almost a narrowed down, your product should be shaping up. You should have a good idea of what it's going to look like, how it's going to stand out, what avenues you can sell your product, and then also the ingredients you want to use. Okay, the next step is research. So this is a really important step. And you can do this before you have your product as well. I did this in the very beginning stages of Spec Dab. So getting out into the market, checking out what's in the category and the competition, maybe buying some products, taking it home, tasting them, getting a good idea of your competition out there, what they're doing, and maybe how you can be different, or just doing lots of research of the stores you want to be in. Price points also is really important to research as well. Food trends, obviously there's food trends coming and going all the time. How can your product fit into those food trends? That's a really important research you can dive into. Manufacturing practices, oops, I spelled practices wrong. Thinking about how your product is going to be made. Do you need specific equipment? Do you need a specific facility? Is there a specific package you need to put your product into? Just research your product. And Dahlia said this, a simple Google search can tell you a lot. So just dive into your product and literally learn everything you can, the ins and outs of what you want to make. Whether it has a shorter shelf life, that kind of thing. Just really research everything about that product, but machinery and what you need to package that product is really important as well. And lastly, which can honestly be one of the most important parts, is you need to understand your food safety requirements for your product, and whether you need a commercial kitchen kind of thing. So obviously every product is different. Some are more high risk, some are low risk. CFIA, familiarize yourself with the new CFIA regulations if you want to go across borders. There is a lot more food regulations and safety requirements than when I first started 7 years ago. So familiarizing yourself with that is super important, and having your kitchen just totally up to snuff is really important. And CFIA has really great resources on their website, and there are lots of CFIA food safety specialists I'm sure in every province. I have a great one in Manitoba. Reach out to them, contract them, sit down with them, get a really clear plan, and get a good idea of what you need early on, because you don't want to start your company and overstep when you needed to have more processes and more plans in place. So this is a really important one. Plan, dream, and analyze. Okay, so actually I want to go back here for a second. Did I miss something? No, I'll do it the next step. Okay, so plan, dream, and analyze. At this point, you want to start drafting your business plan. And this is a pretty boring thing, but it's really important to really just get an idea, a written document of your business and how you're going to achieve your goals, kind of the strategies you have in place, the roadmaps you have for operations, for marketing, for growth. It's a really important plan to have in place, and it will evolve over time. So your first business plan isn't going to be your forever business plan. It will evolve. It just gives you a really great roadmap to go back to and realign and to really think about where you want to go. The next thing is write down your dreams, write your 1 year, 3 year, and 5 year goals down. And, they can become a reality. I never thought that we would be in Sobeys and Safeway and across Western Canada when I started, but here we are. And that was a dream of mine. And I just knew that if I wrote it down every year, I would take a look at it and know I'm a little bit closer. And I also wrote down the things I needed the strategies in place to get there. So it keeps you in check to say, okay, where am I? Do I need to realign myself? Am I deviating from my goals? It's just great to dream. And obviously, if we're making a product, we want it to get it across different channels. And so it's really cool to make that dream and get it down on paper. And lastly, so based on your research that you did in the previous step, now is the time to really analyze your costs and start looking funding options. So at this point, you'll understand your ingredient costs, you'll understand your overhead, your commercial kitchen, staffing, packaging. Obviously, these costs will evolve over time, but by now you should have a really great idea of what those look like and what sort of requirements you need. So at this point, you can start to analyze your costs and say, okay, what kind of product am I going to be? Am I going to be a product that's going to be more middle of the row, or am I going to be more of a high-end product? More chances, because we are local, we are more of the high-end product, and knowing that information and having an idea where you stand with your research of looking at the products that are already on the shelf, you'll have an idea where you kind of have an idea where you're going to be. And also when you know these costs and you understand where you're going to be positioned, you'll have a really good idea when you start to look at your brand and who you want your brand to be. And this is really important. This is all very much intertwined. This is why this step is really important to understand, where all your costs are going to go. And so this does relate to your branding, and we're going to get to that. But also, it's really important to understand that funding is important. I encourage companies not to try and bootstrap it on their own too much. It's very stressful. So having a business plan, you will need to apply for funding. So at this point, it might be a good idea to talk to BDC. BDC is a wonderful organization, maybe Farm Credit Canada, or maybe your local bank, and start getting some funding to get you going and just get you the funds you need to launch properly. So getting your packaging, ordering, the proper supplies you need, and also maybe some marketing. Funding is great to get you going. It just takes the stress off you doing it financially yourself. And also, I just want to talk quickly about costing. I'm not going to dive into this too much, but I do want to say, when you are starting to look at your costing and deciding what you want to charge, whether you're going to be just at farmers markets at first, or you want to look at wholesaling right away, make sure your margins are healthy. I talk to too many companies that leave themselves too tight of margin, and please, gosh, don't do it. If you're going to start right, start setting the bar high, because it's really hard to adjust it as you go. As supply chain changes and things get more expensive, it's better to have a little bit of a healthy margin, I'm trying to say. So, do not leave yourself short of a margin. And also, even if you're just going directly to stores at first, or, just at farmers markets or e-commerce, I encourage you to leave some costing room in there for a distributor, because, and I say this because, if you ever want to bring in a distributor into the mix down the road, and all of a sudden your cost on the shelf is like $2 or $3 more, you're going to kind of tick off the customers that you have worked so hard to nurture and to develop. So it's important to incorporate that distributor margin early, so that when the time comes that you have a distributor, it shouldn't be a difference to the price on the shelf. Does that make sense? It's a really important step I really encourage companies to take. Even if they're not sure if they're going to work with a distributor, I encourage you to make sure that cost is worked in early in the game. Okay, that's my tangent on costing. Very, very important to make sure you have a very healthy margin. Okay, testing. This is a really important step too. As you can see, I am there at the farmer's market. This is how I really tested our product in the beginning stages. As you can see, our labels are very different. Our brand was very different than it is now. It was very homey and, you know, lots of burlap and very rustic. That was kind of our brand then. We're a little bit more polished now, but we definitely still have those roots. But farmers markets are a great place to test because you're going to get unbiased feedback from people you don't know. Handing out samples to your friends and family is great, but you want to get really great, honest, unbiased feedback. And that's a great way to do that at farmers market. And it's a great way to understand, would people buy this at this price point? So set the price point based on your costs that you've already developed from your research and everything. Set your price point and just see how it goes. And you'll get a really good feel from having people right in front of you test your product, whether it's a yay or a nay, and you'll get good feedback. When we first launched in the farmers markets, we have a beer chipotle mustard, and we were getting a lot of feedback from our customers that it was too bitter. So we went home, we tweaked the recipe, and now it's one of our best sellers. So you learn really great feedback from customers then. You know, maybe you're unsure about a recipe, people will tell you, and you'll be able to tell from sales as well. And like I said, you'll just get a good sense of the pricing. You know, if you are a higher end product, if you're showing people enough value, they won't mind paying for it. So it's a good way to test out your pricing, what you're offering people, and just your flavors as well. And farmers markets, I think it was talked about earlier, are a wonderful way to start. Also, kind of getting into the craft market season here. It's a great way to get your brand out there as well. Okay. We're going to brand camp. This is a really important part. And because I think that people just really want to launch a product, but they forget about the brand, the essence of the product and who's behind it. So a brand isn't just your logo, packaging, and your website. It's your voice, it's your tone, it's your values, it's the vibe you give off. It really is everything. I think that, even 10 years ago, a brand wasn't as important as it is now. But if you go on Instagram, if you go on people's websites, a brand really is everything now. It's a community. It's your people. It's who you talk to. It's your community. It is really everything. And it's so, so important to think of developing this as you start picking your products and you start building your company. So I want to talk about people. I think a lot of companies often create a product and they really want to focus creating a product line, but they forget about focusing on the brand as well. So if I look at the definition of a product line is a group of related products, all marketed under a single brand name that is sold by a company. But if you look at a brand is a collective impact or lasting impression from all that is seen, heard, or experienced by customers who come into contact with the company and its product or services. So I'm going to ask you, think to yourself, which one of these, if you really put energy into, do you think is going to develop a like-minded community, trust, and your ideal customers? A brand. So it is obviously about a product, creating a really delicious product that tastes great and is high quality. However, the brand is also something that you need to really think of and put a lot of energy in. It's who you are. It's your heartbeat. It is, it is everything. So it's also a really important avenue of your business to explore. And also, I talked about this early, but a value proposition is really important when it comes to your business. So a value proposition refers to the value a company promises to deliver to its customers should they choose to buy their product. A value proposition can be presented as a business or marketing statement that a company uses to summarize why a consumer should buy a product. So your value proposition is kind of like what I talked about earlier. It's what makes you different. What is going to make you different from your competition? Why should people buy from you? And a value proposition is also very, very important. It's important to think to yourself, how am I different? What am I going to provide the customers? Like I said, what problems am I going to solve for them? It's really important to think about that and start thinking about how you can apply that to your business. And the good thing is your value proposition is something that you can market on your website, on your social media pages. It is something that you should just pound out again into your content, your newsletters and everything. So people should know what your value proposition is, and they should know what you're going to offer them, because that's how you cultivate that community and you develop those customers, because they're like, hey, I need that. I need what they're offering and I want to be their customer. So that's the whole point of the value proposition. It's very important. Okay, so I'm going to show you a couple case studies here. This is kind of some examples of why building a brand is so important. So this is a company called Fishwife. I love them. I follow them on Instagram and I think they're very clever. So basically their value proposition is that they're an upscale option to a traditional economic product with sustainable practices. So my grandpa buys tinned fish all the time, but these guys are like the upscale, more bougie, kind of more millennial tinned fish. They're, you know, it's something you throw into your picnic basket with your charcuterie. It's more of an upscale option, like I said, to that economic product. So, and they have sustainable practices. So their target audience would be male or female millennials. They care about sustainability, but they consume meat and fish because, and I mention that because there is a huge plant-based culture customer base. So I love this company because their brand is so strong. They're fun, they're quirky, kind of nautical, and they're gourmet. And their brand is so strong. And I think that that is so important that they have found a way. Like, they're not just a tinned fish company. Like, there's enough of those on the shelf, but they are something so much more and so much different. I hope this kind of gives you some ideas and some gears turning in your head of how your brand can really evolve into something like this, which is really inspiring. Another example I have is a company called Bloom, who I also love. This is a very successful company out of Vancouver, I believe. So their value proposition is that they're providing a plant-based superfood alternative to coffee. So they have like plant-based like tea blends. And their target audience is, I would say, perhaps more on the female side, which is totally fine because they are specific about their audience, which is great. Self-care enthusiasts drawn to healthy and mindful lifestyles. They definitely have more of a calming, health conscious, and soothing appearance. So definitely very different from the Fishwife brand. They're a little bit more of a soothing look to them, a little bit more calming, and that's just their brand. So again, I hope this gives you some ideas of how you can start thinking about what you want your brand to be. Because I love giving these examples because they're companies that I love. I think they just do a really great job at just being, hey, this is who we are. This is what we do. And this is what we want to, this is the value that we can give you. So the purpose of building your brand is, like I said, to target your ideal customer, to cultivate a like-minded community, to support your value proposition, and to build trust. These are all things we've talked about. And so building your brand is so important. And I talk about this so strongly because I think that we sometimes forget about the brand. We just focus on the product. And because we wear a lot of hats, but this brand building is very important. So I just want to stress that today. So I hope if you take away, you'll take away how strong it is. And why do I talk about trust so much is because consumers are 4 to 6 times more likely to buy from a company they trust. So you do that by really speaking to them and developing your community. Finally, this is one of my last slides. You're ready to launch. So I chose Wild Folk here because I'm a huge fan, and I love the vermouth spritz personally, and I just love the brand that Dahlia has created. I think it's beautiful. I think it speaks to who she is, and I think she's putting a lot of time into it. So I wanted to feature here today. So lastly, you're ready to launch. You've created, you have the product, you have, your costing, you have your research done. It's time to get out there and get people trying your product. So like I said, farmers markets are a great place to start. Craft sales are going on this time of year. E-commerce is awesome. It's time to get your product out there. You've done all the work and now it's time to get out there and have some fun. And so, I know we have a Q&A now. I just want to say thank you for having me. This is my email address if anybody wants to reach out to me directly. I'd love to answer some questions, but I will have some resources that I will send to Bailey, some that I've spoken about today and some that I have that I didn't get a chance to mention, but I hope that was helpful. Yeah.
Amazing, Carly. That was just an excellent presentation. It's so much to cover in half an hour, and you did.
I hope I didn't talk too fast, but I knew I had a lot to cover. So if anyone needs any clarification, please reach out.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm so happy that you touched on branding and marketing because it is such an important part, and it's like becoming a more and more important part with all the use of social media and all the online business that is happening these days. So that's excellent. And it wasn't covered in the rest of the sessions as well. So that was really great. I'm just going to check and see if we've got any Q&As coming in. If not, I have a question. If you're willing to share, what are a couple of lessons that you learned the hard way that, because sometimes you learn more from a mistake than you do from a success. So if you have anything that you're willing to share, that would be great.
100%. So the one thing that I often that's kind of got me into trouble before is I'm way too trusting of people sometimes. So there's been a couple instances, you know, supply chain's been wild. I know that a lot of people can agree this past couple of years. So I said, oh, you know, my supplier knows that I need that stock. He'll let me know when they're running low. No, they will not let you know. You need to reach out to them. You need to call them. You need to be incredibly persistent and make sure that you get your supplies. So there's been a few instances where I've been too trusting of my suppliers and I've been left in a huge lurch. So there's a saying, trust but verify. Like live it. Like email people, touch base, confirm, and then touch base and confirm again, because people are busy, people are human, they forget. And also keep in mind, people don't always own a business. They work for other businesses, so they don't have as much at stake as you do. So, you know, really be persistent and be shamelessly persistent in getting answers, confirmations, getting POs processed. And that's one thing that I've really learned. And secondly, trust your gut. I've also had a few instances where I've worked with people that I've just felt things were a little off. And I've just been like, no, you know, it's going to work out. It's fine. And again, trust that person. And it's, you know, I've had some instances that are really hard to come back from. So if something doesn't feel right, listen to your gut and move on, break ties, do whatever you need to do. Because ultimately, your reputation is at stake. There's money at stake. There's your mental health is really important too. It's a tough industry. So listen to your gut would be another one.
Amazing. Yeah, that's a good point. And sometimes it's not that a supplier or a stakeholder or whatever is like doing something deceitful, but they just may be very busy and forget to get in touch. And so, yeah, to take the lead on that is important.
Sure.
My other question is just escaping me at the moment.
Bailey, I have a question.
Okay, go ahead, Shnuka.
Carly, you alluded to a couple words on just mentorship. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that? You know, how do you find a mentor? Maybe the importance of it, you know, like how much of an impact does it have? Is it when you have someone who's, you know, basically sponsoring you and helping you move along?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that mentorship is so important, and even just having a coach. I hired a couple people actually during COVID when I had, you know, I was working at home and I wasn't traveling or doing as much on the road as I usually was. I hired a couple coaches for retail and also for I worked with a guy that actually helped me with negotiating, and it was awesome. And I think that you don't know what you don't know. And I think that it's just always really important to advocate for yourself, to keep learning and to keep bettering yourself, and to not be ashamed or think, oh, you know, I should know this. You don't know what you don't know. So I think it's important to always just pursue knowledge, like constantly. So connect with people, say, hey, I always say, offer to, I do love, like, you know, contacting people and asking for, you know, some mentorship, but feel free to reach out to people and say, hey, can I pay for some coaching from you? I think that when you do that, people are so much more willing to be like, hey, let me really dive into your issue. Let me really dive into what you need and give you my full resources. So I also think it's really important to offer to pay for services as well, for the mentorship, for the coaching. Yeah, and then there's always people in your industry that are a few stages above you that do love to help. I have a few wonderful friends in the Manitoba food industry that are just gems and are just encouraging, and they encourage you on the dark days. And I think those people are really valuable. And if you can find a couple, I would say you don't need more than two, because you just want to find people that you're really close to and you can be really transparent with. So mentorship is so important, whether you go the coaching route, whether you go consulting or mentorship. I think it's always important to have somebody in your circle that you can call upon and bounce ideas off of. So yeah, 100% mentorship is ongoing and very, very important for development.
Excellent. I remembered my question when you had mentioned about your mental health, and just like throughout your presentation, obviously there's so many different aspects of running a business to keep straight. How do you balance your like life and all of the different things? Like, are there certain things that you delegate or hire out? How do you,
Yeah.
how do you manage those types of things?
That's funny because I actually also have a 6-month-old. You don't hear him. He's quiet. My mom is actually here. So that's also another thing. I sometimes wonder, I don't balance it. Like, I'm a new mom. I have a business. Luckily I have a lot of support, which is great, but it's hard. Like, it is hard, especially having a family. Kudos to anyone out there that has like multiple kids and they're trying to run a business. It's hard. You feel torn, but I think the best thing that I ever did was had a child, to be honest, which sounds funny because as a business owner, I was holding on to all these tasks that I didn't feel like I had a reason to give up. Like, I was doing deliveries, I was doing some marketing, I was doing social media. And eventually I thought to myself, I can't do this forever. This isn't sustainable. So I outsourced my social media to a company that I was already working with. So it was a natural kind of progression. Order fulfillment, some of the manufacturing, we also outsource. And yeah, like, I think that you just have to, sometimes you don't think you're ready financially or your business is ready, but sometimes you really are ready. You just can't let go of it. So I really had to just take that leap and just have faith that the business, the work I had put in, the program, the processes that I'd put in everything was going to work out. So I think that if you're feeling overworked, it's definitely time to outsource something. And I think that for me, it was social media. I found that I was spending so much time on my phone every day trying to figure out what to post, scheduling posts. And I thought, this is just not my strength. Like, this is not what I should be doing. So I think it's important to take a step back and say, what brings me joy in my business and what is bringing me like stress and like affecting my mental health, which sometimes it can really do. So, and when you understand those things, and then you can look at outsourcing. And I think that as business owners, we want to do so much, but our business will be better when we are better. So when we are better ourselves. So it's important to really value that.
Definitely. And likely off the start, you do need to kind of wear all the hats to understand what goes into it. And then, like you said, from there, just figure out what fits and from what you're best at. And yeah.
And that's so true. When you are starting, you really do have to wear all hats because you're just getting going, and chances are the funds are super tight. You're just trying to figure everything out. So you do wear all those hats in the beginning. So that's why I do have a lot of sympathy for companies that are just starting, because I understand that you are just split a million different ways and it's really hard. And then I'm here saying, hey, you need to have a strong brand. There's so many different things that are in the works at all times. So I think it's just really important to take care of yourself, because like I said, the better you are, the better your business will be. And if you can outsource, definitely outsource certain aspects of your business if it makes sense for you.
Great. Okay, we just had one more question come in here. Any comments on registering a business or product name? What was your experience with that, if you can remember back?
So we registered our business first with the Manitoba Company Registry. Now Smack Dab is trademarked. But we don't actually have any of the names of our products registered or anything like that. If you had like a really cool name, like some people have really, great naming for their products, that might be something to register, like trademark as well. But we just have the name of our company trademarked, Smack Dab, and we just registered the company in the beginning. And there is a free trademark search you can do online with Canada, that you can just search the name that you are thinking of naming your company, and you will see if it conflicts. And that way you will have a good idea if you'll have any issues down the road. And I do recommend doing that, because if you, start a company and if you grow like crazy, and then, this other company that has a name that conflicts with yours says, hey, you can't name it that, I've trademarked this, it would be devastating to like really start over. So I definitely recommend a trademark search just to see if you are clear. And then trademarking is about $1,200, I believe. I think it depends whether you go through a lawyer or not, but it is definitely worth it to go that route eventually, I think.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's all good points. And someone has asked, do you have any sources of mentorship that you could provide? So I'm wondering if that's like any potentially business associations, or like how you would go about finding a mentor.
That's a good question. Oh, that's a good question. I've never found mentorship through any organizations. It's just been more organically through people that I've met in the industry. COVID's really challenging because we're not getting to events and networking as much as we usually are. So I would say when things get back to normal soon, just get out to those local events. Like I know in Manitoba, we have a Food and Beverage Manitoba. Saskatchewan has similar, like exactly the same thing. Get out to those events, just start chatting with some people in your industry. This sounds kind of funny, but do some research of some companies that you admire. This is going to sound funny, but find them. And then when you're at an event and they're there, go talk to them. Like shamelessly go talk to them, tell them, hi, I'm a huge fan of your company. I was wondering if I could take you for coffee sometime. They might say yes, they might say no. Just go for it. Like, who cares? Just do what they say. And I think that find the companies that you admire and you're like, find the ones that you are like, hey, this company's killing it. I need to talk to them and get inspired by them and just go after them. And respectfully, of course, and just respect their time. But really, in this industry, you have to just really go for it. And there's a few times where I put myself out there where there was a company I super admired and I just started talking to them and I said, hey, I'd love to take you for coffee. It was like the best thing I ever did. That person helped me so much. And it's hard for I'm an introvert, so it is hard to do that sometimes, but you are your best advocate. So you have to really go for it. So that's what I recommend. It's hard. Again, I've met all my mentors organically through events. So, but just reach out to people over Instagram. If there's somebody that is local to you, and if you're comfortable meeting with them or having a Zoom with them, reach out to them. But again, respectfully, respect their time and their knowledge because, people have taken a lot of years to develop what they know. So what I often recommend, if you are going to, have coffee or chat with somebody that you admire, bring them product and kind of give them that to them as a thank you, because I think it just shows that you respect their time and that's your way of honoring it. People have done that for me and it means a lot because if you're giving your energy and your time and your resources and your contacts, it's nice to show that you're appreciated. So I think that hopefully soon we'll get back to events. You can meet people more organically. But yeah, that would be my 2 cents on that.
I love that tip. The food icebreaker, it never hurts.
Okay, just go for it. Whatever.
Yeah,
What if I say, sorry, I'm too busy for coffee? Okay, no problem. Just move on. But yeah, I definitely think you have to really advocate for yourself and your future and your success. Really, I think that the companies that get left behind don't advocate for themselves and really push themselves to meet new people and to get out there and network. So
yeah. Well, that's wonderful. We have come to the end of our session. Thank you so much, Carly. It was great hearing your presentation and getting to see you face to face. And I look forward to working with you more after this. Yeah.
No, this is awesome. Thanks so much for having me. And like I said, please reach out if anyone wants to email me if they have any questions. I'd love to answer any questions, but I will send you the resources I kind of talked about as well. I'll make a list of them that hopefully will be helpful for people.
That would be great. Yeah, I'm excited to put together the resource package. We've gone over a lot of content today, so it'll be a good little refresher for everyone. So
yeah.
All right. Well, thanks again. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yes.
And I am just going to wrap up this conference here. Thank you so much to all the speakers who gave their time today. This was super fun. I really enjoyed being your MC today. And like I said, we'll be following up. I'm just going to put up our screen here that has our contact information. And so stay connected with us. You can become a member at beawesome.ca/join. That's again for any women-owned businesses in Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba. And you can follow along with us on Instagram at beawesome.ca.
And Bailey, the door prize.
Door prizes, yes. We have Melody Ector and Kate Francis are the lucky winners of our door prizes today. So we will get in touch with you and get your mailing address and send you out your box of goodies. So thanks so much for listening along. I hope that you found some nuggets of good, valuable information today. I know it may not all be applicable right now, but I guarantee that at some stage of your business journey, you'll run into all these questions, and hopefully this has given you something to think about. So stay in touch, have a lovely rest of your day, and we'll be in touch soon. Bye, everybody.